Gamers of the Underworld. Chapters 397 to 418. Chapter 397, Online Violence. Sister Vanez, I don't mean any harm, but did you instigate those rumor-mongers? Peasant asked in a soft voice. He was sitting next to Sylvanas in the high-level meeting of the Pioneer Alliance. What? Sylvanas slammed her hand on the table and stood up. She grabbed Peasant's collar and asked angrily, if I wanted to deal with Raintia, would I resort to using the despicable method of employing rumor-mongers? I'd fight with her one-on-one. After killing her hundreds of times, I'm sure she'd quit. But the dungeon is a safety zone, a member of the management committee rebuked. What, you're accusing me of hiring those rumor-mongers? Are you unhappy with me? Tell me directly, don't slander me with such filthy thoughts. Sylvanas shouted loudly. She was on the verge of violence, no longer able to control herself. Enough, keep quiet. Before the conflict escalated, Arthur slammed the table, and everyone kept quiet. Cough, cough. Not wearing pants sat beside Arthur, and he dry coughed twice. Then, he said, we explained things clearly in the WeChat group. Though Sylvanas is hot-tempered and unhappy with the rumors involving Raintia and Arthur, she will thrash it out directly instead of resorting to underhand methods. I don't believe Sylvanas would resort to hiring rumor-mongers. Not wearing pants said, the rumor-mongers were attacking both Raintia and the guild, especially Sylvanas. They made it look like Sylvanas hired the rumor-mongers. I don't think Sylvanas would be so foolish as to do such a thing. Arthur and I would never be friends with Sylvanas if she did that. Pants. The usually fierce Sylvanas was moved. Of course, Sylvanas isn't the instigator, but she's also responsible. Sylvanas courted Arthur openly and created a love triangle with the rumors of Arthur and Raintia. No, with Dragonborn, there's a four-sided love triangle. That's why our enemy was able to have the rumor-mongers attack us. Sylvanas looked vicious and said, what nonsense is that? What has that got to do with me? Though she looked fierce, she didn't have any conviction in her tone. Arthur interrupted everyone and said, I've investigated this matter and found the rumor-mongering company. I've arranged for negotiations. Wait a moment, did you say negotiations? Arthur bro, are you using money to stop them? Don't yield to them. This rumor-mongering company is shameless. They'll accept your money and set up another gig to do the same thing again. It's a waste of money, Sylvanas explained to Arthur. Wait, why is Sister Vanez so familiar with the company? A member of the management committee was wary. Burning chest hair stood up before Sylvanas reacted and said, hey, Sylvanas' pocket money is worth tens of thousands of yuan. Do you think she won't know the workings of such a rumor-mongering company? There are many rich people who engage the services of rumor-mongers. What do you mean by that? You have been stirring trouble. Have you been bribed? No, I'm just mentioning it casually. Someone beside burning chest hair pulled him and said, don't say a word. Sit down if you don't understand. This matter has been plotted with sinister intentions. However, the instigator won't go scot-free for long. I found details about the company and will investigate the real instigator. Sylvanas' worry is redundant. I'll not give these pieces of trash a cent just to silence them. I haven't yielded to anyone, and I won't do it this time. These companies like to stay in the dark and are afraid of revelations. Whoever's responsible, I'll deal the person a fatal blow. Arthur gritted his teeth in rage. Good, Arthur bro, I support you. If you need to fight a lawsuit, my dad's legal department can help you. Sylvanas clasped her fists and supported Arthur. You gave me a fright. Haha, I was afraid the instigator might be you. Arthur bro would definitely kill Sister Vanez, Peasant said. I said that I wouldn't do such a thing. I would never resort to such unscrupulous ways. Arthur bro likes me based on my own capability. Sylvanas said confidently. No, Arthur said without emotion as he looked at Sylvanas. She had moved to Arthur and grabbed his arm as she said, Aia, Arthur bro looks handsome when he's shy. Wait, gay guy Sylvanas, do you have a distorted sense of shyness? Oh, before burning chest hair finished his words, Sylvanas had placed a stranglehold on his throat as she said, huh? What did you say just now? Repeat that again. Who is a gay guy? Tell me, stop, Sister Vanez, you're strangling chest hair bro. He can't speak. Peasant and a few other members rushed forward to stop Sylvanas. Though it wasn't possible for anyone to be strangled to death, it was better to be safe than sorry. Not Wearing Pants looked worried and said to Arthur, I'm guessing that the instigators of this matter are those people of the other large guilds. I don't know which guilds, but Rentia's side is hard to handle. Arthur sighed and nodded as he said, I know. I'll try my best to console her. Both Arthur and Not Wearing Pants were uneasy. They were very clear that once a vase was broken, even after repair, it wouldn't be flawless. After this premeditated online violence, Rentia had resigned from the guild, and she might quit the game. Once a person's reputation had been damaged, it was hard for the person to survive. In reality, the person could change to a new environment for a new beginning. In the game, however, it was quitting. Changing to a new game was an easier option. Things didn't look good unless there was a miracle, or unless Rentia liked Arthur. Both possibilities were almost non-existent. It was almost a fact that Rentia would quit the game. Things could be sorted out, but the damage inflicted during the process was permanent and irreparable. Quitting the game? Sherlock was browsing the discussion forum. Since yesterday, there were many inciting posts and personal attacks. Many members mentioned it themselves. Sherlock had to deal with them, as every post would result in a large-scale conflict. Though Sherlock was a superior devil, he was order-oriented. He thought it would be good if the gamers became mindless machines. If they couldn't do that, at least they shouldn't start any conflict. If they had the time for bickering and degrading the gaming experience of other people, why did they not use the time to carry more bricks or work more in the factory? Because of these troublemakers, Sherlock delayed bringing Brainiac and Polio to meet Nicholas. Sherlock was listening intently to Bru's report. According to his report, a gamer might quit the game within these 2 days. The gamer was Rentia. Chapter 398. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 1. It's worse than I thought. After listening to Bru's report, Sherlock pondered for a while before saying, I have to conduct a counseling session. Educating kids isn't easy nowadays. Sherlock stood up and walked outside the Dungeon Lord main hall. He couldn't allow Rentia to quit the game. Sherlock wouldn't allow any gamer to quit the game because of online violence. They were his precious babies and personal property. The gamers worked hard to develop the dungeon and work in the factory. They used various ways to pay magic stones. This kind of precious citizens couldn't be found anywhere. Moreover, Rentia was a promising potion apprentice. The little fairy was willing to teach the gamers because of Rentia. So, if Rentia were to quit the game, the little fairy would think that Sherlock reneged on his contract and discontinue her classes. Rentia was important to Eternal Kingdom, and Sherlock couldn't afford to lose her. Lord Sherlock, I understand your intention and the importance of Rentia, but we're unable to interfere. You're an NPC and unable to affect Rentia. Though some gamers will be touched by an NPC's story and change their minds, that is rare. If social interaction breaks down in the game, counseling isn't able to solve the problem. Bru noticed that Sherlock was about to act and said, I suggest we consider how to make the little fairy continue working for us. Without Rentia, appropriate torture and violence may be necessary. But this method destroys all loyalty, Bru. If I can capitalize on her weakness and make her work for me willingly, it'll be better. As a New Age Dungeon Lord, if I'm unable to motivate my employees, then I can't be the greatest Dungeon Lord, Sherlock said with a smile. He wasn't worried at all. Moreover, manipulation of the heart is the specialty of a superior devil. Since Lord Sherlock says so, let's try it. Help me do something, Bru. At your service, Lord Sherlock. The little fairy sat in her treehouse, which overlooked the gamers who intended to attend her class. But the little fairy was in no mood to teach them. Because Rentia wasn't her usual self. The story started with a few arrogant gamers. They approached Rentia at the flowerbed and spoke sarcastically to her, accusing her of having a relationship with an orc called Arthur and being a third party. They accused her of breaking the unity of the Pioneer Alliance. The little fairy didn't say a word, only spitting saliva at them until they fell to the ground. She didn't show mercy, leaving their heads penetrated. The little fairy thought that after killing the filthy-mouthed gamers, Rentia would be happy, but she wasn't. Rentia's time in the game dwindled, and she stopped planting herbs. After harvesting the current herbs, she made minor healing potions and handed them to another gamer. Finally, she started packing her belongings. This is my blanket. I don't know if the weather will turn cold. Keep it. If the weather system changes to winter, you will have a blanket to keep warm. Rentia placed her blanket in front of the little fairy. Compared to other unhygienic gamers, Raintia was particular about cleanliness. She used the underground water to wash it and dried it with fire. She would also boil water to bathe. As she turned off the pain setting, she was scalded a few times in the boiling water. As for the other gamers, it was rare to see them wash their faces at the black jar of water that was placed by the guild entrance. It was related to their lifespan. Since the gamers were prone to dying, even if they were filthy, they didn't mind. When they revived, they would be clean, so there was no need for bathing. Raintia was different. She hadn't perished before. Even when the ogres invaded Eternal Kingdom, Raintia hid in the little fairy's treehouse. As the fighting was too brutal, she went offline. After the battle, she got online and found that she was still alive. After being alive for that long, she had to be concerned about her hygiene. Wait a moment, if you give me your blanket, what about you? Do you have a new blanket? Are you going to Winterfell to buy a new one? The little fairy accepted Raintia's blanket and sat down in the treehouse. She gestured to herself as she pondered where to place the blanket. Raintia took out a few bags of tea and said, "No, I don't need a blanket. I asked someone to bring some small bags of bloody chrysanthemum tea from Winterfell. It's expensive, so I only managed to get some. Don't finish it too fast. I don't drink bloody chrysanthemum tea." The little fairy declined Raintia's offer. Then she noticed the dispirited Raintia and was taken aback. "What's the matter? Are you leaving this place?" "I think so." Raintia nodded and hugged the bewildered little fairy. Due to the little fairy's wings, Raintia didn't hug her too tightly. She hugged her for a short while and started tearing up as she said, "Thank you. I was happy during this period of time. I have to bid you farewell." The little fairy was confused, and she asked, befuddled, "What happened? Is your contract ending with that great devil? Are you going home?" "No, I'm leaving this world." Raintia wiped her tears and said, "Due to some rumors, I won't be happy here. Though I'm sorry to leave you, I have to go." "Thank you, little fairy. I don't know your name, so I called you little fairy." "Do you have a name?" "Victoria City has a race called Fairy." "Victoria City? Ah, is that the human city that waged war with Eternal Kingdom? Do they have fairies? Did they imprison the fairies? Did they torture them?" The little fairy was agitated when she heard about it. Though little fairies and fairies were two distinct races, they lived in the forest and had little wings. They had the same lineage, with the fairies being more secular. "No, we didn't torture them." Raintia wanted to say that the faction war was brutal, but she didn't say it. She felt that the little fairy wouldn't be happy. "Ah, that's good. Yes, my name is..." The little fairy braced her chest proudly. Before she spoke, Sherlock's voice was heard coming from outside the treehouse. "Little fairy, please wait for a moment." The little fairy looked unhappy and a little angry. After soothing her emotions, she peered warily out of the treehouse. She looked at Sherlock, who was under the treehouse, and asked, "What's up, you devil? What evil plan do you have?" "Nothing much, it's just a greeting." Sherlock stood below the treehouse, surrounded by curious and quiet gamers. The gamers were restrained by Sherlock, and they entered the plot animation mode. Sherlock was smiling cordially. He looked at the little fairy above and said, "Your execution time is approaching." "What?" the little fairy shouted in shock. Raintia was also dumbstruck, but she was unable to speak since she was also in the plot animation mode. A new plot had surfaced, and it was out of everyone's expectations. Sherlock appeared at the flower bed and said to the little fairy, "Your execution time is approaching." He captured the little fairy, who attempted to escape, grabbing her wings like he did when capturing Eggface. The little fairy wouldn't yield so easily. She spat her saliva like a machine gun. Though it was effective against the gamers, it was useless against Sherlock. All the saliva was deflected and made harmless by his mana shield. Sherlock captured their life skill instructor, the little fairy, right in front of the gamers. Sherlock wouldn't kill the little fairy easily. The gamers received a series of missions. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 1. Raintia was included in the missions. Chapter 399. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 2. Mission description. Previously a slave of Lord Sherlock, the little fairy has changed her attitude and pledged allegiance to Lord Sherlock. She is currently teaching potion concoction. After the advent of Victoria City, the little fairy is changing her stance. Lord Sherlock doesn't trust the little fairy and intends to execute her. But she is important to Eternal Kingdom. To save the little fairy, you have to do something. Mission objectives. Daily missions. 0.5 thousandths, full service. Carrying bricks. 0.5 thousandths, full service. Submission of magic stones. 0.5 thousandths, full service. Working in the factory. 0.10 thousandths, full service. Assisting the little fairy. 0/1, personal. Mission reward. The little fairy's favorable impression, 1,000 reputation points, and a free potion concoction class. Mission failure penalty. The mission is to be completed within 3 days. Otherwise, she will be executed in public by Sherlock. Your potion concoction careers will be terminated. This is cheating. What kind of mission is this? The game producers are so unscrupulous. If you can't think of a good plot or activity, open up new instance dungeons. Or let monsters attack the dungeon. Why are you using the NPC to blackmail us? Is your brain damaged? Wah, I'm giving up. I've played online games for 10 years. I haven't played Tencent games or Angry Birds, but I survived the To-Do Network games and the game protagonist flying all over the place in the sky. However, this underhanded mission makes me give up. Die Shirley. Return the little fairy to us. If Shirley kills the little fairy, I'll kill myself today. I'll carry out the promise to kill myself daily. All of you are so unhappy. Will you please quit? My friends want to join the game, so please quit. The day Sherlock captured the little fairy, the gamers were full of unhappiness. The game and the discussion forum were filled with complaints, and the gamers scolded the game producers for losing their minds. How dare they capture their life skill instructor and make the amiable Shirley into an evil character? The gamers had cultivated close ties with the little fairy, so Shirley must be an idiot to kill her. The gamers will definitely attack Shirley for revenge. It was unclear whether Shirley could be attacked. But one thing was clear, to the Pioneer Alliance Guild, it was good news. Due to the controversy of the new plot, the Raintia attacking posts created by the rumormongers were being pushed down the discussion forum. The screen was full of posts like, "Lousy game producers. Return us our little fairy, down with Shirley. Save the little fairy. Whoever scolds my hubby Sherlock, I will fight with them. Brainiac isn't aware of the little fairy's predicament. Please don't ask Simba about the little fairy. The infuriated Simba has destroyed 2 pieces of my equipment. I can't take a third blow." In the stronghold of the Pioneer Alliance, Arthur and his team were having a meeting. The game producers are giving us a boost. When the new plot was introduced, the attention shifted. The money paid to the rumormongers has gone down the drain, Peasant said as he lay in a rocking chair, clasping the back of his head while crossing his legs. This rocking chair was salvaged from Winterfell when Peasant was still a Houndhead man. The size was perfect for a gnome or Houndhead man. However, Peasant was currently an orc. An orc was larger than a gnome by a scale, so the rocking chair seemed a bit small. But it could still be used. The plot mission wants us to increase the pace of our development and the frequency of our trips to the road intersection. It will only last for 3 days. After that, the rumormongers are free to do what they want. Burning chest hair sighed as he sat on a small stool and scratched his bald head. The 3 days is a good resting period. Raintia intended to quit the game today, but when the mission was introduced, I saw Raintia taking the public beetleman to the road intersection to carry bricks. Not wearing pants said, "I wanted to talk to her, but I was stopped by the gay guy Vanas. You're not a girl, so you don't know how they think. Though I'm against Raintia, she will think that the rumormongers attacked her and damaged our reputation. She will feel guilty and quit the game. Girls are always afraid of implicating others. If you talk to her, you'll make her feel worse," Sylvanas said solemnly as she sat cross-legged on Arthur's bed. "Wah, since you've said so, I'm sure you're a guy. Because you don't mind implicating us," Not Wearing Pants said firmly as he pointed at Sylvanas. "What the heck?" Sylvanas extended her hand to pull out her weapon, but she discovered that she had no weapon. Everyone removed their equipment when entering the guild. The room wasn't cleaned and was full of blood stench. It was better not to bring equipment into the secret room. 3 days is more than enough time. As Sylvanas was about to stand up and wrestle Not Wearing Pants to the ground, Arthur said, "Yesterday night, I arranged for people to negotiate with the rumormonger companies. The investigation was conducted, though there's not sufficient evidence to confirm it. This rumormongering was instigated by the Changan City Guild." "Changan City?" Isn't that the guild with the chairman named Mystery Man that has 500 members? Gosh, I thought it was Dragon Raja who instigated the troubles. Not Wearing Pants said in surprise. Why did you think that it was Dragon Raja? Burning Chest Hair asked, puzzled. Because Dragon Raja has been high profile. The guild was filling the discussion forum with posts concerning the recruitment of elite members, impromptu stalls, and auction bids. There were even members standing outside the instance dungeon advertising for Dragon Raja. The guild claims to be in the top 10 online guilds in the country, Not Wearing Pants explained casually. Impossible. Dragon Raja's chairman, BT Kangren, knows me. His dad and my dad are business partners. He has been playing Legend of Mir since he was young. His most unscrupulous methods were blocking the revival point while scolding people and feigning a city siege to keep people awake throughout the night, said Burning Chest Hair. After Burning Chest Hair finished speaking, Peasant shouted in astonishment, gosh. Chest Hair bro, how come you never mentioned it? I had a meal with the Meat Vegetable Rice Alliance's chairman, stir-fried vegetable rice. Should I be telling everyone? It's normal to have a meal. We all know each other in this small circle. Do you think our world is huge? Arthur raised his hand to interrupt their idle chat. I'm going to the Changan City Guild to talk to their chairman. If the guild is willing to shoulder the responsibility, apologize to Raintia, and restore our reputation, I won't deal with them. Otherwise, I'll make sure their guild is destroyed, Arthur said viciously. Peasant sighed and said, Arthur bro, you're steady. Do you want to get some men to harass them in real life? Arthur bro, see if you can find their location, I'll go and confront them. Though I'm smaller in size, my combat skills are invincible. Nobody in school can defeat me. Playing the game has made you number one in the school. Not Wearing Pants teased Sylvanas. Let's be logical, Arthur. Even if Changan City is willing to apologize, the situation is already awkward. I feel that Raintia will still leave. Do you have any way to make Raintia stay? Burning Chest Hair looked worried. He noticed that Arthur was keeping quiet and sighed. I thought by having such a powerful potion maker in our guild, we would have cheaper potions. But now, it's all for naught. The 300 minor healing potions won't last us more than a few days. Don't worry about the potions. It's easily solved with money. If Raintia quits for good, our guild will have one less pretty gal. That's a great loss. Not Wearing Pants pat Burning Chest Hair on the shoulder. I'm still around. I'm a pretty gal, Sylvanas shouted loudly. However, Not Wearing Pants rebuked, impossible. If you're a pretty gal, I'm your big-breasted sister. What? Repeat that again. Forget it, Sylvanas. Don't hold it against Not Wearing Pants. Fight him. Fight him. The room became rowdy. Though Raintia was being attacked by rumormongers and they were infuriated, they weren't that depressed. Raintia wasn't a core member of their group and was only a friend. They would just help as much as possible. However, they wished for a good resolution. Arthur turned his head and looked out the window. He noticed Lord Sherlock standing on the street. He felt that Lord Sherlock was also observing him. When he recovered from his thoughts, Lord Sherlock had continued walking with a long trail of curious gamers. Chapter 400. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 3. The gamers were working hard to complete the mission to save the little fairy. Sherlock was idling. Though the discussion forum was full of praises for him, he wasn't proud and would never be proud. As a dungeon lord and a promising superior devil, Sherlock was working towards his dream of becoming the dungeon lord of the greatest dungeon. Hey, superior devil, release me. Raintia is leaving. Your citizen Raintia is leaving. What are you doing? What is that colorful object that you're looking at? Release me. Though the little fairy shouted in the metal cage, Sherlock didn't intend to free her. He was focusing on his computer. A kitten squinted his eyes and licked his paws as he sat beside the metal cage. He looked at the little fairy and asked, "This is food for me, meow?" "This is the little fairy, Lord Sherlock's slave. She's not your food." A fat black dragon dragged his body as his claws grasped a cup of steaming bloody chrysanthemum tea. Since he was working for customer service, his supply of bloody chrysanthemum tea was more than usual. It was his benefit for working in Eternal Kingdom. I know that this is the little fairy. Why did the superior devil enslave her? Is it for decorating the gardens? Let me eat her, meow. The kitten Polio edged closer to the little fairy, who had been screaming just before. A paw extended towards Polio and cuddled him. Polio emitted hoo-loo-loo sounds as he was feeling comfortable. Have both of you completed your assigned work? Sherlock shouted, turning his head to look at Polio and Eggface sternly. Meow. Polio meowed softly and ran to a corner, scratching the ground with his claws. He was fretting over the name of the mercenary group. Polio had changed the name a few times during the past 2 days, but he was still not satisfied. He made sounds that indicated his frustration. Why did he have to think of a name? Release me. We have an agreement. You can't execute me. You guaranteed Raintia's safety while I train your citizens. But now, Raintia is leaving. Do you intend to kill her? Are you going to renege on your contract? We signed an agreement. The little fairy shouted furiously after Polio and Eggface left. The word, danger, appeared on Sherlock's screen. Then, he was subjected to a series of attacks, and the screen became dark. The word, death, occupied the entire screen. Sherlock covered his face and stood up. He walked to the shelves and brewed a cup of bloody chrysanthemum tea, then said to the little fairy, I'm helping you. If I didn't capture you, Raintia would have left Eternal Kingdom. Because you're imprisoned, Raintia has to work hard to save you. Take a look. Sherlock took out a crystal ball that depicted Raintia mining ore diligently. Her slender goblin body looked small compared to the large ore surrounding her. She looked vulnerable and pitiful. Despicable superior devil, you're doing such a shameless thing to torture me. I won't forgive you, never. Even if you kill me, I'll never yield. The little fairy screamed in rage. Sherlock didn't receive his expected gratitude. Sherlock pondered for a while. Though he had good intentions, wanting to make Raintia stay, the little fairy didn't understand the concept of quitting the game. She thought that Raintia's contract had expired and that she was going home. Therefore, the current situation appeared as if the unscrupulous superior devil captured the little fairy to blackmail Raintia. Raintia could have been cultivating herbs happily at the flowerbed, but now she was forced to work in the mines and suffer mental and physical exhaustion. The little fairy understood how Raintia felt just by looking at her expression. Lord Sherlock, it does look like this situation. I don't doubt your decision, but are you going to imprison the little fairy forever? And blackmail Raintia? If that's the case, we can't let Raintia achieve her potential. We intend to use Raintia to control the little fairy so that she will teach the gamer's potion concoction. If we imprison the little fairy, she can't teach them. Lord Sherlock, take my suggestion and use special ways to control the little fairy. Brew suggested in Sherlock's mind, but he didn't respond. Instead, Sherlock asked, have you finished the task that I asked you to do? It has been completed. Just as you expected, it was those creatures. Shall I ban all of their accounts permanently? Frankly speaking, I hate rumormongers. Brew said immediately, no, I still need them. Just follow my original plan. Lord Sherlock, I can't understand the rationale of your plan. But I'll still carry out your plan faithfully. Brew said and then kept quiet. Sherlock walked to the front of the little fairy while carrying his cup of bloody chrysanthemum tea. He knelt down and looked at the glaring little fairy, who had squirmed to the far corner of the cage due to fear. Sherlock said, I think you've misunderstood me. I'm not your enemy, I'm with you. You don't want your good friend Raintia to leave, and it's the same for me. It's unfair of you to accuse me of causing harm to Raintia. There are others causing harm to Raintia. I'm maintaining order here. If not for me, Raintia would have died. I don't believe a word of yours. The little fairy shouted indignantly, but she made her body smaller and trembled in trepidation. She was fearful of the superior devil, especially when he said that he was executing her. I know you don't understand because there are lots of unresolved issues. But most of the time, we can work together. To obtain your trust, I have done some investigations. I have a list of perpetrators who created trouble for Raintia. The little fairy lifted her head and stared at Sherlock. She frowned and asked, perpetrators? Didn't I defeat those who attacked and humiliated Raintia? Huh? This little fairy is silly. She thought she defeated the perpetrators? Brew complained about the little fairy, but she couldn't hear him. Those were the obvious ones. There were some who plotted against Raintia in the dark. Their goal is to destroy Raintia. Sherlock said mysteriously to the little fairy. Why? Raintia doesn't antagonize anyone, nor does she get involved in conflicts. She works hard to produce potions to relieve their pain, the little fairy yelled. Wait, did she mention the poisonous potions? I know the side effects of the minor healing potions. Did the little fairy see the potions as poison? She taught the gamers how to produce poison and let them take it. Lord Sherlock, we should execute such an unscrupulous teacher. Announce the execution, the gamers won't blame you. Sherlock didn't respond to Brew. He said temptingly to the little fairy, but they are jealous of Raintea's capability. In the underworld, her capability is a good reason for her death sentence. Wait, are you telling the truth? These creatures are going to harm Raintea? The little fairy edged closer to him and grabbed the metal grills. Though she was quivering, she shouted loudly at Sherlock, "Aren't you the dungeon lord? Shouldn't you stop your citizens from doing such a thing? Why are you so calm? You shouldn't imprison me, you should chase those harmful creatures away. If Raintea is harmed by them, I'll never teach your citizens how to make potions." Never, huh? Sherlock stood up and looked coldly at the little fairy as he said, "Are you threatening me? I've decided to execute you. Do you think I'll care about this? Do you think I'll kill so many creatures just for Raintea? Do you think it's fair? Of course, if Raintea stays in Eternal Kingdom, it's better than her leaving or dying. Don't worry, I won't let them go too far. You used such a nefarious way to poison my citizens. I made the correct decision to execute you." Sherlock turned his head, not looking at the little fairy. Brew said to Sherlock, "Lord Sherlock, I remember this poison was created because you told her that you wanted the fastest, simplest, and cheapest healing potion, as long as it didn't cause instant death." Is that so? I have no impression, Sherlock replied casually. "Lord Sherlock, your acting is getting better and better. The little fairy is now under your control. I can roughly see the future developments. I would like to ask Lord Sherlock, are you a devil?" "Yes, a superior devil." Chapter 401. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 4. The little fairy sat in the cage in the dark. She had heard the full details of the matter from Sherlock. The rumors said that Raintea was the third party to Arthur and Sylvana's relationship and that she attempted to break up the Pioneer Alliance. The little fairy was scoffing. Though Raintea looked ugly, she had a good heart. Why would such a kind-hearted goblin break up the relationship of two orcs? The little fairy couldn't believe that such a rumor would be believed. How could a goblin possibly break up an orc couple? The little fairy couldn't figure it out. She lay in the metal cage, ruminating over Raintea's predicament. Hey, the little fairy heard a faint voice. A fat black dragon had his claws on the metal grill of the cage as he spoke to her. Ka-cha! The little fairy woke up in shock and scurried over to the opposite corner. She looked warily at the black dragon and asked, "What are you doing? Do you want to get out?" "Lord Sherlock's sleeping," Eggface said to the little fairy. "What are you talking about?" The little fairy couldn't believe it. She looked at the black dragon, then at Sherlock, who was sleeping on an improvised bed made with two chairs. The computer screen in front of Sherlock was still on. He seemed to have fallen asleep while working. "I'm releasing you. Frankly speaking, I'm with Raintea," Eggface said and paused. "What about Raintea?" the little fairy asked impatiently when Eggface stopped talking. "Raintea and we." Eggface repeated himself many times and lowered his head. He spread out his claws as he said, "Raintea is my benefactor. I was captured by the evil Lord Sherlock. He forced me to do many things against my will." Eggface looked at his palm and said, "Raintea saved me. She gave me things to eat and drink and helped me cut my fingernails. When the evil Sherlock tortured me, she stood out bravely and fought with him." "Fought with him? Impossible. Raintea would never do such things. Raintea doesn't know how to fight," the little fairy shouted with certainty. "No, I'm telling the truth. You haven't seen her bravery." The little fairy muttered to herself, "Are you sure? Why haven't I heard Raintea mention this or you? Raintea would never tell others of her good deeds. She's a kind goblin. Why do you think that I'd work for a superior devil? Because of the tasty bloody chrysanthemum tea? Because of computer gamers? Because he intimidated and tortured me." The little fairy believed his words. If not, why would a small black dragon do tiring and menial work for a devil? While the little fairy was imprisoned here, she saw the pitiful small black dragon being forced to sit in front of the computer for a long time. She didn't know what kind of magic device the computer was or how it operated, but the little fairy had seen Eggface appearing tired, sad, and shocked when facing the screen many times. "Let me out. I'll find other dragons." The huge dragons won't let a small black dragon be tortured and humiliated by a superior devil. They'll rescue you. The little fairy shouted to Eggface. That's what I thought. You're Reintea's friend, so I trust you. I'm letting you go. Leave silently. Don't make any noise, Eggface said as he took out a key and opened the metal cage. The little fairy walked out of the metal cage slowly. She inhaled the fresh air and felt freedom. Thank you. I'll save you. Yes, if you're free, rescue Reintea. I'll give you a map. She's in the building with the signboard that says, Changan City. Eggface passed her a hand-drawn map with a large circle on it. The little fairy expressed her gratitude and took the map. She then walked outside the Dungeon Lord main hall and saw a flurry of activities. There were goblins, gnomes, and orcs working outside. As such, the little fairy made herself smaller and activated invisibility. With that, those evil underworld creatures wouldn't be able to see her easily. The little fairy soon found Reintea's location by following the map. Peasant strolled in the commerce area and browsed the goods displayed by the improvised stalls. He was looking for a bargain, especially healing potions and equipment. It was then that he heard a gamer shout, "The little fairy has been captured by the Changan City members." Changan City? It's a guild formed after the third beta test. They're going to send her back to Sherlock for a huge reward. Gosh, why didn't I have such luck? Of course you don't. The guild has a few hundred members to capture the little fairy with. Do you have that capability? Peasant quickly informed Arthur and his companions. News of the little fairy being captured by the Changan City Guild was everywhere on the discussion forum. There were generous rewards for this strange encounter mission, so the guild members were bragging in their posts. Mission title: Saving the Little Fairy, Lord Sherlock, Strange Encounter. Mission description: The cunning little fairy escaped while the guard was asleep. This cannot be allowed. Please return the little fairy to Lord Sherlock. You will receive generous rewards. Mission objective: Please bring the little fairy back to Lord Sherlock within a day. Mission reward: 100 sets of legendary equipment that don't have a reputation level requirement. 100 sets of legendary equipment? Without a reputation level requirement? The implication was that newly joined goblins could use the equipment. The posts caused a lot of discussions, even amongst gamers from Victoria City. There were many complaints of unfairness directed at the development team and the game producers. Most of the gamers regretted not joining Changan City Guild. The members of the Changan City Guild were overjoyed. They escorted the little fairy that was locked in a cage to the Dungeon Lord main hall, wanting to hand the little fairy over to Sherlock and obtain the 100 sets of legendary equipment. When they arrived at the entrance, the door to the Dungeon Lord main hall was guarded by 100 gamers. They were members of the Pioneer Alliance that were being led by Arthur. The members of Changan City and the Pioneer Alliance were about to fight. Prior to their confrontation, the relationship between the guilds was tense. Changan City challenged the Pioneer Alliance to a guild war previously. It was easy to explain why the Pioneer Alliance was blocking Changan City. The other gamers assumed that the Pioneer Alliance didn't want Changan City to obtain the 100 sets of legendary equipment since that would negate the equipment advantage the Pioneer Alliance had. That was how Arthur explained things to his guild members. Only a small number of members knew the truth, which was that Arthur's goal was to rescue the little fairy. Reintea didn't wish for the little fairy to be executed by Sherlock, making the strange encounter mission a great opportunity for Arthur. Dungeon was a game with a high degree of freedom, and the plot was affected by the interactivity and decisions of the gamers. If Sherlock decided to execute the little fairy, could the gamers stop him? From the current situation, that was possible. The series of Saving the Little Fairy missions stated the possibility of executing the little fairy should they fail the mission. The gamers would lose an important potion concoction teacher. What are you doing? Why are you blocking the door? Give way. Is this what the Pioneer Alliance is capable of? Blocking other gamers so that they can't complete their missions? Shirley, open the door. Your door is blocked by a group of silly dudes. The gamers of Changan City were screaming wildly at the entrance, but the members of the Pioneer Alliance didn't plan on moving. Moreover, the dungeon was a safety zone, so the gamers of Changan City were unable to fight the Pioneer Alliance members. If members of the Pioneer Alliance continued to block the way, they could cause the mission of the Changan City gamers to fail. If that was the case, there would be no drama. Chapter 402. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 5. Because of the Little Fairy, the Pioneer Alliance and Chang'an City were at loggerheads. This matter spread quickly to all the gamers. At the distant road intersection outpost, Raintia, who was working hard to save the Little Fairy, also heard the news. She threw away her pickaxe and dashed out to the wilderness, shouting to attract the attention of dire wolves. She was supposed to shout, "Ah, ah, ah," but as a goblin, she was unable to make complex sounds. So, her actual shouts were like, "wah," and similar sounds. Raintia was revived in Eternal Kingdom, and she immediately rushed to the Dungeon Lord main hall. The place was filled with gamers and loud bickering noises. The dwarf cousins, Simba and Mufasa, came to watch the commotion on their stools. Nobody dared to stand in front of them, because Simba would memorize the green symbols above the gamers who blocked their view. Who would dare antagonize Simba at the risk of ruining their equipment? The Little Fairy was imprisoned in a cage that was carried by a skeleton. Chang'an City was able to capture the Little Fairy because of Brainiac. According to an anonymous gamer, Brainiac happened to pass by and enter Chang'an City's building. He happened to discover the Little Fairy, so he captured her. Coincidentally, he brought a metal cage with him. There were too many coincidences in this incident. Some gamers speculated that someone from Chang'an City must have triggered the strange encounter mission in a series of chain missions. Nobody could confirm the facts since the members of Chang'an City didn't come out to clarify things or brag. They just wanted to enter the Dungeon Lord main hall. Raintia tried to push herself through the crowd, but she was pushed back. It was difficult for a goblin to push her way through from the back. Raintia wanted to push through and shout, "Little Fairy." Then the Little Fairy could respond by shouting, "Raintia." However, it wasn't a movie, and Raintia was unable to make her way through. Even if she shouted anxiously, nobody would hear her over the wild chatting of the crowd. If the dungeon wasn't a safety zone, there would definitely be bloodshed. The Pioneer Alliance would definitely win and take the Little Fairy mission. Chang'an City is pretty cool too. The door of the Dungeon Lord main hall opened, and everyone became silent. Sherlock stood at the doorway and surveyed the surroundings. "What happened, my respected Lich?" Sherlock asked as he looked at Brainiac, who was holding the Little Fairy. "Lord Sherlock, I captured the fleeing Little Fairy, but some citizens don't wish to see the Little Fairy executed, so they blocked the entrance," Brainiac said respectfully. "A lot of people aren't happy with my decision. After all these months, do you trust the Little Fairy?" The gamers discovered that they could speak and started shouting. "Don't kill her. We won't get any legendary equipment. What will happen to our potion concoction if the Little Fairy is killed? Release the Little Fairy. We want to learn potion concoction. Arthur Bro is awesome. Defeat Shirley. Brainiac, we didn't expect you to betray us. Hey, don't be meddlesome. This is Chang'an City's mission. Our chairman said that half of the 100 sets of legendary equipment will be given out for free. Those who want to have a set can take part in the lucky draw. There will only be 50 lucky winners. Don't believe Chang'an City's nonsense. They're deceiving us. You're making us go for lucky draws? Are you looking down on us? Hey, Arthur said that he'll provide each full-service gamer that helps block Chang'an City with an equipment improvement. Gosh, that's awesome. I support Arthur. The Little Fairy belongs to us. Denounce the execution. The gamers shouted angrily, but their voices were muted as they entered plot animation mode. Sherlock supported his arms in front of his chest as he pondered. Then, he nodded and said, "I understand your intentions. I'm not an unreasonable dungeon lord. I have to consider the opinions of both parties. Therefore, we'll use the traditional way to resolve this." Sherlock spread open his hands and announced loudly, "Use the arena to decide on the victor. The winner will have the authority to determine the Little Fairy's fate. Warriors, her fate lies in your hands. Brainiac will watch over the Little Fairy to prevent her escape." Sherlock turned around and returned to the Dungeon Lord main hall. Brainiac bowed in the direction of Sherlock. When the plot animation mode ended, a notice appeared before the gamers. Chang'an City and the Pioneer Alliance guilds will duel at the Northern Arena after 10 hours. There will be 3 different duels. The winner will decide the fate of the Little Fairy. A full-service announcement appeared. Full-service gamers can watch the duel at the sides, and bets can be placed. Winners of the bets can obtain large amounts of reputation points. The guild war between Chang'an City and the Pioneer Alliance was no longer between the two guilds. The winner would decide the direction of the plot. If Chang'an City won, the little fairy would be dead, and the guild members would receive 100 sets of legendary equipment. If the Pioneer Alliance won, the little fairy would be saved, and Chang'an City's mission would fail. A third full-service announcement appeared. The first battle is a group battle. The members of Chang'an City and the Pioneer Alliance will fight in the Northern Underground World Gladiator Arena. The side with 0 survivors will be declared the loser. Oh my god, the first battle is a 1,000-person battle? 500 versus 500. That's awesome. Gosh, we can place bets. I bet 10 silver coins on Chang'an City winning. Silly dude, they have fought before. The Pioneer Alliance defeated the other guild decisively. I bet on the Pioneer Alliance to win. It's hard to say. The previous time, the Pioneer Alliance won because Chang'an City had just started, and their members were new. 2 months have passed, and Chang'an City has accumulated good equipment. They might just defeat the Pioneer Alliance. Chang'an City spent a few million to upgrade their equipment and pay out salaries. Their 500 members are all professional gamers. It's hard to say who will win. A crisis had led to an open duel with the help of the plot. Though Chang'an City was unhappy with the plot, they couldn't do anything or complain. The game didn't have top-up channels or advertisements. The game producers had no intention to earn the game as money. It was unclear how the game made a profit. The members of the two guilds dispersed to prepare for the duel. They had 10 hours to prepare for the first battle. There would be 3 duels, but nobody knew the format of the remaining 2 battles, so it was better to win as many duels as possible. Raintia paced anxiously outside the crowd. What should she do? Should she concoct more minor healing potions to assist the Pioneer Alliance? 10 hours wasn't enough. There wasn't time to plant the raw materials. Wait, she could accumulate the raw materials using money and magic stones. Raintia ran to the commerce area. She headed straight for the auction area to search for raw materials, but there were only a few raw materials. Even the finished minor healing potions were all being bought. Accumulating minor healing potions and their raw materials at high prices. You'll get higher prices with greater volume. Sell your materials and potions now. Raintia ran over, but the gamer was from Chang'an City. Chang'an City was preparing for battle and accumulating minor healing potions so that the Pioneer Alliance wouldn't be able to obtain them. It was hard to imagine Chang'an City wasting their money to deprive the Pioneer Alliance. Besides concocting minor healing potions, how could Raintia help the Pioneer Alliance? Raintia stood in a daze, unsure of what to do. Raintia didn't know when a kitten appeared beside her. The kitten sat on the ground and said to Raintia, "Meow, meow, I see that you have a mana skills book." Are you interested in a strange encounter mission to learn about healing mana skills?" the kitten asked as he squinted his eyes and licked his paws. Chapter 403. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 6. The Northern Underground World Gladiator Arena. A gnome worker in a neat blue uniform stood at the entrance. He smiled as he welcomed the goblins, houndhead men, gnomes, and orcs. They had green symbols above their heads, and they streamed out endlessly from the teleport portal. Soon, they filled up the entire circular arena. When the worker confirmed that there were no more creatures, he walked towards the resting room. After waiting for an hour and welcoming more than 4,000 spectators, no creature would be able to stand it. It was necessary to go to the resting room to drink a cup of water. There was another gnome sitting in the resting room. It's tough. There are more than 4,000 creatures. The gnome saw his colleague walking in and complained in a helpless and indignant tone. They seem to be from Eternal Kingdom and are registered gladiators. I know a few of them. Of course. Why else would they arrive using the dedicated teleport portal for gladiators? I wonder what the big event is today. Is there a mass gladiator blind date today? I don't think so. It doesn't look like a mass blind date. They didn't bring snacks and looked dirty and unkempt, so it can't be a mass blind date. Have you seen blind dates in the arena? You can't be sure. They are gladiators, after all. The two gnomes said simultaneously as they looked at each other and nodded. Yes, they are gladiators, after all. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Northern Underworld Gladiator Arena. Today, we shall witness 3 consecutive duels. They are the death duels of Chang'an City and the Pioneer Alliance. The gladiator fight is different from previous fights. as there will be actual deaths in the arena. A metal cage was lowered on a screen composed of 4 crystal balls, which depicted a large image. It showed a little fairy locked in a metal cage that was hung up high. The host shouted, "Today, victory is determined by who wins 2 out of 3 duels. The winner will decide the fate of the little fairy. She is likely to die. Cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, the most bloody and brutal gladiator fight is about to begin." The gamers erupted into wild cheers after the host finished speaking. They didn't understand why, but it was appropriate to cheer. The gamers occupied half of the arena, while Underworld residents occupied the remaining area. Every day the arena would have gladiator fights with different themes, with the most popular being the sole survivor fight with individual and team variants. Though the opening for today's duel was traditional, the prisoner, the little fairy, was an eye-catcher. To the Underworld residents, it was an anticipated event. There was a lot of bloodshed in the previous gladiator fights, but they were performances. Right now, the duel would have deaths to honor the little fairy. The little fairy was a decadent and evil surface world creature, so it was better to kill her. The gamers and the natives cheered in anticipation of the duel. Meanwhile, in a gladiator resting room. "Are you really fighting? Raintia, you haven't died before, have you?" Peasant asked the nervous Raintia, who was holding a tree branch while he polished his shield. The tree branch was an Underworld magic wand, which could be found at the Winterfell magical items shop. The effect of the magic wand was to increase the mana affinity and power of the user. Some high-quality magic wands were even able to store mana. A magic wand was a piece of powerful and necessary equipment for a magician. However, very few magician gamers would equip themselves with magic wands. Magic wands weren't cost-effective. The high price tag didn't come with equivalent combat power. There weren't many mana skills available to the gamers, and they weren't powerful. Examples were small fireballs and hurricanes. They required long periods of incantation and had to be combined with the usage of bladder bombs. Otherwise, the power was limited. It was more efficient to stab with a knife. Therefore, the existence of magic wands was redundant. Peasant was the first magician in the game. His style was to complement his main physical attacks with mana skills. Currently, there were no gamers who wanted mana skills as their main combat skill. "I won't be a burden to everyone. I have learned superior healing mana skills. As long as there are no broken arms or legs, I can help heal everyone," Raintia shouted solemnly. The words, "Pioneer Alliance," appeared once again under her name. To defeat the members of Changan City and save the little fairy, Raintia rejoined the Pioneer Alliance Guild. There was opposition to her joining the guild since some felt that she didn't have any combat power. Though a single member was insignificant compared to 500 members, a strong member was better than a weak one. Even Arthur thought so, but after he witnessed Raintia's new mana skills, he decided to let Raintia participate in the first battle. "Don't be tense. Relax a bit. We've beaten them before, so just follow us. Where did you learn your new mana skills?" "I went to buy a mana skills book to learn mana skills, but I couldn't find healing mana skills," Not Wearing Pants, who was sitting by the side, asked. The other guild members were also curious about Raintia's new mana skills. "The kitten Polio gave me a new mission. He is the new pet of Lord Sherlock." Raintia appeared nervous as she held the magic wand and answered the gamer's questions. "Gosh, I knew the kitten wasn't a white elephant. It was meant for the gamers to cuddle. I didn't expect the kitten to have a strange encounter mission. Didn't you cuddle the cat before? Did you receive the strange encounter mission after cuddling the cat? The strange encounter mission must have a prerequisite." Yes. Veteran Raintia, under what circumstances did you receive the strange encounter mission?" The other gamers were asking Raintia, curious about her strange encounter mission. Raintia explained her mission in detail. When she was troubled and wondered how to rescue the little fairy, the kitten Polio approached her and said, "I'll teach you a set of healing mana skills that were passed down from the ancestors." He then took Raintia to the dungeon core main hall entrance. From the mana skills selection, she spent a mana skills book to learn the healing mana skills. "That simple? Aren't there any prerequisites? Gosh, is that all? This is a strange encounter mission based on character?" Not necessarily. Perhaps the gamer obtained the favor of the NPC. Everyone was speculating about how the strange encounter mission was triggered. It was at that point that an arena worker walked to the door and shouted to everyone, "Gladiators of the Pioneer Alliance, prepare yourselves. The duel is about to begin. Pick up your equipment and wait at the holding area. Let's go, brothers. Arthur sprung up, and the metallic clanking of his armor was heard. He clapped his hands and smiled confidently as he shouted to the gamers. Charge! Let's go! Let's butcher those silly dudes! Wah! The battle that all gamers were watching was about to commence. While the gamers of Eternal Kingdom were watching the battle between Chang'an City and the Pioneer Alliance, the gamers of Victoria City were cursing and swearing. They swore at Chang'an City, cursed the Pioneer Alliance, and scolded the game producers. Gamers could only have a single account, and changing factions required 100 magic stones. Not to mention, if the number of people in both factions was equal, it was hard to change factions. As such, the gamers had a strong sense of belonging. Moreover, the game was ultra-realistic, like the real world, making their sense of belonging even stronger. The plot of Eternal Kingdom was exciting, while the plot of Victoria City paled in comparison. The gamers were unhappy, and they complained. A person had triggered a plot. In the slave resting room in the Castle of York territory, Lord Duke, Hoodlum is here. A servant led the tall and fat Duke of York to a deep corner. There were prison cells with sitting, standing, and resting slave gladiators along the way. They were private slave warriors of the Duke of York. In the innermost resting room, inside the largest cage, there was a strong slave warrior sleeping in the darkness. Slumbering Hoodlum, the Duke of York muttered to himself as he looked at Hoodlum, who was currently offline. Chapter 404. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 7. Hoodlum's legendary story had spread throughout the nobles of the York territory. Hoodlum had to undergo cruel training under the coaches of the Duke of York and participate in various brutal gladiator fights. He fought with many different opponents of various races. No matter how hard the battles were, he achieved victory. He had almost died many times. Once, his neck was stabbed multiple times. He suffered the pain of asphyxiation and dealt his opponent a fatal blow. A grandpa nurse quickly treated Hoodlum's wounds and saved him miraculously. The Duke of York was so worried that he cried. Of course, it was all hearsay. Hoodlum's fame spread like wildfire. When he was sleeping, nobody could wake him up, so everyone called him Slumbering Hoodlum. A slave warrior with such strong characteristics was often beaten up, but it was like having a meal to him. The long period of beating and healing would have caused a normal creature to go mad, but Hoodlum didn't. Instead, he was on close terms with the prison wardens. In the midst of beating and being beaten up, he made many friends. They even became close friends. Hoodlum, why do you have to sleep so long? Asked a prison warden who was on close terms with Hoodlum as he flogged him. The prison warden wasn't sure why he was flogging Hoodlum. They would have various reasons for flogging Hoodlum. For example, if he took things without permission or if the prison wardens wanted to build up his endurance. I'm getting busier these days. Work and life issues. I'd like to resign from my full-time job to play computer games, but who knows if Dungeon can survive. If the game is closed down one day due to a regulation breach, I'll be in trouble. I'm a 30-year-old man with elderly and young dependents and a house loan. The pressure is immense, so I can't afford to resign. Do you wish to leave this place? Leave this place? Impossible. I won't be able to leave in my lifetime. I can't make things or earn money. I can only be happy in the game. The beatings here are severe, the meals are delicious, and there's free medical treatment. I won't leave this place. The prison wardens couldn't understand Hoodlum's answers. Perhaps his brain was damaged by the beatings? The Duke of York thought he could depend on Hoodlum to make a fortune, so he registered Hoodlum for the next underground dark gladiator fight in the capital city. The prison wardens made a difficult decision. Ka-cha. Z-ya. The prison cell was opened, and a few prison wardens stood at the entrance. At this time, Hoodlum was offline and looked like he was sleeping. They looked at each other and nodded. They carried Slumbering Hoodlum and placed him into a bag, then loaded him onto a carriage and sent the carriage off. The prison wardens also fled with the carriage. They looked gently at Hoodlum and silently thanked him. Because of Hoodlum, they found the meaning of their lives. Once the carriage had traveled a good distance, they threw Hoodlum into some bushes by the road. Ha ha ha. The fat Duke took advantage of my wife, so we'll throw his golden goose away. Let's see how he's going to handle the gladiator fight in the capital city now. Yes, yes. Big boss, you're so clever. Big boss, where shall we go? Anything is better than being prison wardens at the Fat Duke's castle. We'll become bandits. Good, it's good to be a bandit. We'll capture the wife of that Fat Duke and take revenge for the bullying of our big brother. The prison wardens discussed their plans as their carriage disappeared into the distance. Darting birds carried fully armed riders as they ran across sand dunes. A gnome rider wielded a pike as he screamed loudly. Then, he was thrown off his ride by the lance of a black armored orc knight. Kill all of them. We're the final victors. Arthur rode on a darting bird. After knocking an enemy gnome off his mount, he shouted to a group of fighting gamers behind him. In the arena battle, the gladiators didn't form a row where they screamed and charged at each other. The gladiators were deployed far away in 5 different directions. After that, they charged at each other. Each side was allowed to deploy a minimum of 50 gladiators. The gamers who were tactically trained came up with the optimal deployment. They concentrated 300 gladiators in one direction while deploying at least 50 gladiators to the other 4 paths. It was nonsensical to deploy the gladiators equally. The gamers made use of their superior numbers to defeat their enemies and then reinforce the other paths. The smaller groups of gladiators at the other paths could only defend. The victory condition was to have a sole survivor. Both Chang'an City and the Pioneer Alliance used the same tactic. Arthur deployed his elite gladiators to the upper path, while Chang'an City deployed their best gladiators to the bottom path. To achieve the greatest combat efficiency, both guilds made use of darting bird riders as their main force. The darting bird riders had the highest mobility and combat power. Both guilds spent a lot of money to buy darting birds from other gamers. All the available darting birds were bought by the 2 feuding guilds. The main forces of both guilds overwhelmed their enemies, and they met on the middle path at the same time. It was obvious that the combat power of Chang'an City had improved by leaps and bounds. The Pioneer Alliance had the 101st Beta Gamers, which included the elite rich gamer, Arthur. Due to the recent rumor-mongering incident, the 2 guilds were at odds. In this battle, the guilds went all out to kill each other. They planned to use explosives. In the game, a gamer with the best legendary equipment wasn't able to fend off a single bladder bomb explosion. If there was a gamer who could fend off a single bladder bomb, then the enemy would use 2 bladder bombs. In the final battle, the entire arena became a sea of explosions. Frontal detonation, sudden explosions, flank detonations, and suicidal explosions. What about the darting birds? They became casualties of war. Fortunately, there was no darting bird protection agency. Otherwise, they would come out and protest. In the sea of explosions, there was a vulnerable figure who wandered around and created white flashes. Elves of Darkness, please heal the citizens of Darkness. Give them a strong constitution so that they can deal a fatal blow to their enemies. Raintia had to chant an incantation each time she used her healing mana skills. Her incantations were standard fluent Mandarin. The gladiators who were injured by the explosions were healed by Raintia if they didn't die immediately or have broken limbs. Occasionally, the gladiators would be badly burnt by the explosions and die. If that happened, Raintia was unable to help. Raintia managed to heal about 20% of the injured gladiators. With the help of a healer and that powerful combat capability, the Pioneer Alliance quickly gained the upper hand. Sherlock was sitting in the VIP stand and watching the battle scenes on the big screen, his ears filled with the wild cheering of the spectators. Nothing could be more exciting than watching such stimulating and bloody combat. The Underworld natives thought that the battle was enhanced with mana. The gladiator arena manager, Poison Skin, was accompanying Sherlock. The body of the poison toadman was filled with lumps, and his appearance would cause a decrease in appetite. He clapped his webbed palms while he praised, "Lord Sherlock, though I've watched a few times, every time I watch your gladiator fights, I'm still astonished by their awesome performances." "This is what a gladiator strives to do," Sherlock said humbly. No. This kind of superior quality is only attributed to your gladiators in the entire Underworld. We're looking forward to your new invention so that we can promote gladiator fights to the entire Underworld. The poison toadman spread out his hands and shouted, the metal stick in his mouth falling out. Sherlock didn't share the poison toadman's exhilaration. He smiled cordially at the poison toadman and said, "Yes, I'd like to borrow your big screen." "What are you borrowing?" "The big screen." Sherlock pointed to the crystal ball in the middle of the arena. The spectators could watch the fights in the arena or the big screen that depicted details of the battle. The screen showed Arthur charging at Mystery Man. Yes, that's the one. Please let me borrow it. Chapter 405. Saving the Little Fairy, Part 8. The first gladiator fight ended with the Pioneer Alliance as the victor. This was expected. That being said, the casualty rate was high, especially the loss of darting birds. Chang'an City was completely destroyed, but it was a worthwhile battle because they could obtain 100 sets of legendary equipment should they win. The second battle was announced, a 5v5 battle with the prohibition of all explosives. This battle mode was made known via a full-service announcement. Gamers of Chang'an City immediately protested because the Pioneer Alliance had the most powerful gamer, Arthur. The Pioneer Alliance would have a huge advantage over Chang'an City. The protest was in vain. If the game officials bothered with protests, they wouldn't be labeled as lousy game producers. While everyone was waiting for the start of the second battle, the screen in the middle of the arena flashed a few times before becoming dark. Hey, can you hear me? The gamers and the locals were bewildered. They didn't know why the changing images and the advertisements had vanished. The screen was dark, but a voice was heard. Greetings, I'm a gamer. I'll be broadcasting a video that I secretly took. The reason is that I love it. Please take a look. The screen flashed again and showed a small room, where an orc sat behind an old table. From the green symbols above his head, he looked like the chairman of Chang'an City, Mystery Man. Beside him were two upper management members of the guild. The images were clear, looking as though it was a first-person recording. The image quality wasn't important, though. The important thing was the content. Double the number of rumormongers. Don't smear Arthur or the Pioneer Alliance, just concentrate on Raintia. If she leaves the Pioneer Alliance, there will be disagreements and dissension within the guild. Then, we'll frame it on Sylvanas, who will go crazy and make a fuss. With that, the guild will collapse by itself. Chairman, you're awesome to have thought of such a plan. I'll go offline and contact the rumormongering companies. I'll let the two of you handle it. Don't bother me with trivial affairs. The images stopped at this point, but the voice continued speaking. This is the information that I'm sharing. Happy gaming. The host appeared calmly on the screen as though there hadn't been a video at all just now. The local natives were befuddled, not knowing what the video was talking about. The gamers, on the other hand, were bursting with emotion. Mystery Man of Chang'an City was responsible for slandering Raintia and defaming the Pioneer Alliance. The video shown just now was the evidence. This was like an 818 post with strong evidential proof. It couldn't be fabricated. In the game, there was no device or technology for doing that. The gamers were puzzled. Where did the video recording function come from? Soon, the gamers discovered the video recording function, which was similar to taking screenshots. They uploaded their 3-minute in-game recordings to the official website. The video that was shown on the big screen was captured using video recording software. Public discussion was plentiful even before the start of the second battle. Sherlock sat in the VIP stand while observing the gamers who were talking below. The poisoned toadman was befuddled, not understanding why Sherlock requested to broadcast the video. He didn't mind, though, as long as Sherlock was happy. Lord Sherlock, I'm impressed. The video exposed the misdeeds of Chang'an City's chairman, who has no idea how the video was recorded. Ha ha ha. Brew laughed in Sherlock's mind. Then he said, once we remove these rumormongers and clear Raintia's name, she won't think of quitting the game. Remove? I had no intention of doing that from the beginning. Their purchasing power is strong. In this mission, Mystery Man donated hundreds of magic stones. I feel that they are still useful. After all, the factory needs this kind of worker, Sherlock explained to Brew. But Lord Sherlock, if we don't take them out, will Raintia's case come to an end? Brew asked with concern. It wasn't easy for you to prepare everything to expose the truth. Aren't you going to punish those evildoers? If you don't take them out, I'm sure you know what's going to happen. Of course, they'll continue with their smearing campaign and accuse Arthur of scheming or creating fake pieces of evidence. They almost damaged your interests and will continue to do so. This doesn't seem like your usual style of handling things, Brew said confidently. My style? You must be mistaken. I'm not a righteous hero who protects the crying and weak. I'm not doing all of this to clear Raintia's name or punish the perpetrators. I only need Raintia to remain in the game and perform to her potential. Sherlock looked at the screen that showed the Pioneer Alliance's resting room. Within it, a gamer was using her healing mana skills and motivating Arthur's 5-member team. My goal is complete. A broken vase can never return to its original state, so it's better not to be a vase. There's no point moaning over a damaged reputation since it can be rebuilt. Though I'm unwilling to admit it, I'm in awe of the power of friendship. Lord Sherlock? Are you a devil? Of course. Sherlock smiled and said, I'm a superior devil. The drama of saving the little fairy ended after 3 days. The Pioneer Alliance defeated Chang'an City after winning 2 battles, and they released the little fairy. Mystery Man, who was depicted in the leaked video, was subjected to questioning by gamers. Some hot-tempered gamers swore to kill all members of Chang'an City in the wilderness. A lot of angry members also left Chang'an City, and they wouldn't return the benefits that they had enjoyed. The smearing campaign on Raintia had toned down. Due to Arthur's intervention, the number of rumormongers was reduced drastically. The gamers were now focusing on the evil deeds of Mystery Man. After Raintia rejoined the Pioneer Alliance, she joined other gamers to explore the spider's lair. She was howling in fear when she witnessed the jumping spiders. However, Raintia was having a richer gaming experience and forming closer ties with her friends. After releasing the little fairy, Lord Sherlock didn't pay attention to this incident. He took Polio, Brainiac, and Eggface to Nicholas's office. He was going to handle the Black Volcano incident. Chapter 406. Patrick Starr's report of the Black Volcano. He's the mercenary captain, Black Cat Captain Polio, whom I mentioned to you before. Sherlock introduced Polio, who was on the table. Behind Sherlock were Brainiac and Eggface. Greetings, I'm nobody has this name's captain, Black Kitten Polio, meow. The Black Kitten had a small waistcoat. It wasn't known when he had prepared his waistcoat. Nicholas glanced at Sherlock to ensure that he wasn't being pranked, then shook Polio's paw and said, Greetings. Captain of nobody has this name. Nicholas conveniently tried to forget the name. He could see the tough character of Polio, but the mercenary group's name was strange. The name isn't important. The important thing is that the mercenary group can help you retrieve your item and investigate the reason for the destruction of the dungeon core. Nicholas quickly explained, No, Lord Sherlock, the dungeon core hasn't been confirmed destroyed. Oh, of course. This is a small probability. To increase the probability of success, I'm sending my best lich, Brainiac, to be the technical advisor. My capable assistant, Master of the Dark Flames, Eggface, will be Polio's logistics officer. Don't worry, Nicholas, just wait for our good news. Nicholas took out his seal and imprinted it on the contract to employ nobody has this name. I'm depending on you, Black Cat Captain. Lava was spurting out of a distant black volcano like an abandoned red cauliflower. Patrick Starr sat in a tea house in a small town not far from the foot of the black volcano as he wrote the latest draft of his news article. After reporting on the dungeon war between Eternal Kingdom and Morgan, he had become the top reporter of the Winterfell press. The most important thing was that Patrick Starr understood the meaning of his life, which was to obtain the most unusual pieces of news. Helping an old granny across the road, clearing the clogs in toilet bowls, the reared old chicken dying, and traffic jams weren't news, not according to Patrick Starr. For example, Patrick Starr wasn't interested in reporting the news of not helping an old granny cross the road. When he learned of Winterfell's crisis from a secret channel, that Winterfell had a deal with the Northern Dukedom and the merchant band was annihilated at the Black Volcano due to some special reasons, he rushed over. Thanks to the advanced technology of the teleport portal, he only spent a day traveling from the edge of the Northern Underworld, Winterfell, to the middle of the Northern Underworld, the Black Volcano. Over here, he received many pieces of news. Have you heard about it? The volcano is erupting these days. It's scary. Who will excavate the clay to eat? What? Who dares to excavate clay while it's erupting? The clay is polluted by the volcano. Aren't they afraid of death? He's thinking of ending his life. The last I heard, his wife had an affair with a goblin. He's pitiful. He's only known his wife for 5 years. If he dies, his 8-year-old child won't have a dad. Similar conversations were heard in the tea house. While Patrick Starr was writing his report, a werewolf, who was the boss of the tea house, wiped the bar counter. Then, He slung the towel over his shoulder and asked Patrick Star, "You aren't here for a tour of the Black Volcano?" How did you know?" Patrick Star was wary. The werewolf smiled and showed his sharp teeth. "Then," he said, "it's the volcano's eruption period. Besides the suicidal and those looking for a free tour, nobody comes here. Their mental states are different from yours. I've worked here for tens of years, so there's nothing here that escapes my eyes." "Really? Can I interview you? I'm a Winterfell reporter. This is my reporter pass." The eyes of Patrick Star lit up. He took out his employment pass for the werewolf to take a look. "Oh, a reporter. We welcome reporters," the werewolf exclaimed happily. He took out a wooden signboard with the words, "Tea House Information Outlet. Please feel free to ask questions at 1 magic stone per question." There was a line of fine print. "I'm only providing information as a tea house boss. I'm not an oracle." There was another line of even finer print. "I may not be able to answer extremely hard questions." The last row of fine print was almost illegible. "All explanation rights belong to the tea house." Patrick Star paid 1 magic stone and asked in anticipation, 2 months ago, during the volcano's dormant period, did a large merchant band come through here? What happened to them? You have asked 2 questions. Patrick Star paid another magic stone. The boss put away the magic stone quickly and said, "For the first question, I don't know. For the second question, I don't know." "You don't know?" Patrick Star raised his voice and said, "Are you fooling me?" The boss tapped on the wooden signboard. Patrick Star paid a magic stone and asked, "Did you notice any suspicious creatures?" The boss pointed at Patrick Star, who slapped the werewolf's finger furiously. He threw out another magic stone and asked, "What else do you know? Tell me all the juicy news." "A 5,000-member group is coming to our small town for a free tour. They booked a small piece of land outside the small town. They don't intend to stay in our town. There will always be creatures who don't like sleeping in houses. I can't understand why they prefer to sleep in sleeping bags. They are climbing the Black Volcano. I think they are all going to die." The werewolf intended to leave, but Patrick Star pulled him back and asked, "Wait, a 5,000-member tour group? Where did they come from?" "From the famous Eternal Kingdom." The conflict between the Pioneer Alliance and Changan City escalated. They roped in other small guilds as helpers. Almost all of the gamers of Eternal Kingdom were involved in this conflict. Dragon Raja and the Meat Vegetable Rice Alliance guilds were knee-deep in their own conflict and didn't have the spare time to be involved in other guild wars. Dragon Raja and the Meat Vegetable Rice Alliance were on the side of the Pioneer Alliance. However, it was impossible for Dragon Raja and the Meat Vegetable Rice Alliance to form an alliance and help the Pioneer Alliance, so they decided not to get involved. The conflict was reaching a boiling point. Besides the safety zone in the dungeon, the guild members were killing each other in other locations. The fiercest fighting took place outside the entrance of the Instance Dungeon. The outpost at the Crossroad intersection, as well as the Marsh Inkspewer town, were safety zones. At the entrance of the Spectre College Instance Dungeon, both guilds were involved in an epic battle. Raintia was behind the team formation, continuously using her healing mana skills to heal her team members. "Raintia, retreat, we can't fend them off any longer." A group of gamers charged at Raintia and shouted, pulling Raintia to the entrance of the Instance Dungeon. A few gamers pulled Raintia into the Instance Dungeon. As for the other gamers, they didn't enter the Instance Dungeon because they perished outside. The Pioneer Alliance couldn't possibly win every engagement. Sometimes, their smaller groups would encounter larger enemy groups. They escaped into the Instance Dungeon after gaining long periods of combat experience. The loot of dead gamers could be exchanged by enemy gamers for rewards. They could also take one of the pieces of equipment for themselves. The only exceptions were the purple and orange legendary equipment. If the gamers were to perish in the Instance Dungeon, their equipment would appear in Eternal Kingdom the next day. The gamers only had to pay a small price to redeem the equipment. Therefore, it was better to die in the Instance Dungeon. Raintia and the other gamers put down their equipment neatly at the Instance Dungeon entrance. They then proceeded into the depths of the Instance Dungeon so that they could be killed by the monsters. These incidences became more common, and the Spectre College was troubled. The graduating students couldn't graduate by winning against these suicidal gamers, as the Invigilator would invalidate the win. In the end, the examination candidates had to retake the examination. Though it wasn't the first time Raintia had died, she was still apprehensive about dying. The game was too realistic, so it was normal for the timid Raintia to feel fearful. The other gamers smiled happily while they perished. In the blinking of an eye, Raintia had returned to Eternal Kingdom. Their guild members saw them appear at the revival point and asked them about the situation. Seeing their concern, Raintia smiled contentedly. They were surrounded by the enemy, then they died together. These were experiences that Raintia never had before. Chapter 407. Version 0.37 Update Log. The revival point of Victoria City was filled with gamers. Because, on this day, a special gamer was revived. It had been 2 months since the start of the third beta testing. Hoodlum, who had been live streaming what he did daily, came back. He was revived at Victoria City. The gamers surrounded him and asked him questions with concern. Hoodlum created a detailed post about his experience on the discussion forum, but it wasn't popular. Besides beatings, he received more beatings. It wasn't refreshing, and other gamers weren't interested. Hoodlum didn't mind narrating his experience. He was feeling the heart pain from the sudden termination of his strange encounter mission. He was prepared to be a slave warrior for a year to train up his combat skills. Hoodlum was puzzled over the loss of the strange encounter mission. He found himself in the wilderness the moment he got online and was unable to find his way back. Finally, he arrived at a village. Feeling hungry, he took some food from a food stall, but he was killed by the boss. What? Did Hoodlum steal food? No. How could he be stealing? The mysterious journey of Hoodlum came to an end. The Duke of York was furious because Hoodlum had disappeared. He issued arrest warrants for the escaped prison wardens in Hoodlum, but he knew the chance of finding them was slim. When slave warriors escaped, they would never return. Besides, Hoodlum experienced inhumane torture and endless combat training. Each time, he would endure near-death experiences. If it were to happen to the Duke of York, he would have killed himself. However, Hoodlum didn't complain. Instead, he smiled happily while going through the torture. He was a natural warrior. But his natural warrior had escaped, and he had registered for the capital city's secret gladiator fight. The Duke of York couldn't take the blow. He swore he was going to find Hoodlum no matter what it took. The Duke of York wasn't a fool. To find Hoodlum was like finding a needle in a haystack. However, Hoodlum must have family members like a wife and children. If he could blackmail Hoodlum with his family members, he would appear before the Duke. So, the Duke of York found all of the creatures who knew about Hoodlum. The slave merchant who sold Hoodlum to him. A whip lashed across the body of the fat slave merchant, which was already covered in whip marks. The slave merchant convulsed and was unable to cry anymore. The cruel Duke of York sat in a chair, enjoying his dessert while he watched the slave merchant being whipped. He wiped his mouth and said, "So, Hoodlum was sold to you by Edward Scissorhand? You told me that you didn't know the whereabouts of Edward Scissorhand. You deceived me, my dear partner." Though the Duke of York sounded gentle, he was brutal to the slave merchant. "Apologies, Grand Duke. I didn't mean to deceive you. Edward provided a large number of slaves. I intended to divulge his location after making use of him. Please believe me, Grand Duke." A whip lashed him again, and he screamed in pain. The Duke of York picked up a piece of paper and examined it. Let me take a look at your testimonial. You only know that he came from Victoria City? Yes. Edward saw that Hoodlum was captured from Victoria City. He lived in Victoria City, so his family must be in the city as well. The slave merchant shouted nervously. Victoria? The Duke of York pondered for a while and found the name familiar. His adjutant bowed and said softly to the Duke. A tall man in a black costume brought a huge sum of gold to buy a piece of land. You sold the land to him to build a resort town called Victoria City. It must be that place. Bought? No. This is York territory, a king's territory. How can it be sold to him? I'm leasing it to him. The Duke of York shook his head and said, find the exact location of Victoria City and send a cavalry team to tell the mayor to hand over Hoodlum or his family. I believe the rich mayor won't reject my request. The adjutant nodded, acknowledged, and left. The Duke of York looked at the slave merchant, who was hung up, and the servants at the side started whipping the slave merchant. The little fairy sat in her treehouse, and Raintia was telling her the things that happened today excitedly. Then, Cool breeze buttocks charged at me. I was scared to death, but peasant came from the side and used a shield to stop him. Peasant? That orc? I heard you mention him before. The little fairy frowned and said. Yes, during the duel, he was the orc that detonated a group of enemies. Yes, and Raintia continued to tell her story while the little fairy listened to her intently. The little fairy had an idea of what happened during this period of time. Raintia was being bullied, so she wanted to leave Eternal Kingdom. Then, Sherlock captured the little fairy and wanted to execute her. Because of this, Raintia decided to stay. After that, the little fairy knew what ensued. After the little fairy was imprisoned, a small black dragon released her. Raintia confirmed that she didn't know Eggface, so his reason for knowing Raintia wasn't valid. There were other doubts like the sudden appearance of the black kitten who taught Raintia healing mana skills. And the video that appeared during the gladiator fight. The little fairy was suspecting a possibility. Could everything be part of Sherlock's plan? Eggface and Polio were Sherlock's subordinates. They must have been instigated by Sherlock. The video that appeared in the arena to clear Raintia's name and the series of events seemed to be orchestrated by the superior devil, Sherlock. Why did Sherlock help Raintia? Perhaps, Sherlock had taken a fancy to Raintia and wanted to do evil things to her. That was terrifying. Members of Chang'an City are now being condemned by the other gamers no matter what they say. They don't have a voice in the discussion forum, and those rumormongers are also being dealt with by Arthur and Sylvanas. I'm so happy. Raintia spoke happily. As for the little fairy, she was deeply worried. Sherlock didn't know that the little fairy was wary of him. He was working diligently in front of the computer. Sherlock finally completed the Civilization 6 Inches computer game by nuking the entire world. He closed the game and normalized his breath for a long time. There were too many computer games, and Sherlock only had 24 hours per day. He couldn't possibly sustain the 27 hours of a devil. It was difficult for him. Playing computer games was a job. Was Sherlock merely playing computer games? That was only on the surface. Nobody would believe that what they saw was real. You have to select Rome. The Roman legion is invincible. You don't have to drag it out for so long, Eggface said as he stood beside Sherlock and witnessed Sherlock nuking the entire world. If I'm going for the battle path, why don't I start with the stronger Scythians? Sherlock rebuked. Eggface retorted 2 more sentences and then ran back to his computer. After seeing Sherlock play Civilization 6 Inches, Eggface was tempted. He started Civilization 6 Inches as well. Sherlock didn't stop Eggface. He had another task to complete, the version 0.37 update. Version 0.37 update log. Dearest gamers, 3 months after the start of the 3rd beta test, we have the latest version 0.37 update. Even though the ogre threat hasn't been neutralized yet, Winterfell is experiencing another new crisis. We can't stand by and do nothing. Winterfell is our good neighbor. We have updated the new map, Black Volcano. There's a huge underground volcano in the middle of the northern underworld. Half of the time, it's active. The other half, it's dormant. It's one of the famous tourist spots. We updated a new crisis, Winterfell's commercial crisis. Winterfell and the Northern Dukedom's item was stolen at the Black Volcano. Most of the 2,500 Winterfell guards disappeared, while the survivors died not long after. The other guards are believed to have met their end. We updated a new profession, potion concoction. After a series of missions, the little fairy is on closer terms with the gamers. Now, she will teach advanced knowledge of potion concoction. Added a new bug, the little fairy's impression of gamers. If you helped in the activities to execute the little fairy, you will be held in disdain by her. I'm unable to change her impression of the gamers. If I think of something else, I'll add it. Chapter 408. I want an online relationship. Smiling Nangong. Added new function, in-game recording. You can record a 3-minute video in the game and upload it to the discussion forum or other places. This function has been available for quite some time. I'm informing all gamers and helping the game officials add a forgotten update. White blue sky. The previous poster is awesome. If _I_ can _be Eden, is the customer service representative on leave? Who is not afraid of female bandit? Updates. The update frequency is high recently. Doctora. The game producers updated with a new crisis. That's awesome. Rock candy fruit. Are they forcing Chang'an City gamers to quit? The content of the discussion forum was shown in the shimmering liquid crystal display. A gamer in loose hip-hop pajamas was typing while gazing at the computer screen. She paused and pondered for a while before typing a few words and hitting enter. Softy. It's an Eternal Kingdom update. When is Victoria City going to get an update? I hope to have more updates for Victoria City. At Dragonborn at Take Aspirhit at Sealhead Chong. After typing, she hugged her knees and swayed on the stool while giggling. Softy, it's bedtime. Stop playing computer games. The voice of a young lady was heard coming from outside the room. Okay. Mom, I'm going to sleep. Softy switched off the lights and her computer, then groped in the dark to find a long gaming capsule. Under the moonlight, the silhouette of a young lass was seen. The young lass opened the gaming capsule stealthily and laid down inside. She then saw the login screen of Dungeon before her eyes. After logging in, a beautiful female human awoke in a house that was about 20 square meters. It was dark outside, and sounds of cicadas mixed with chatting voices could be heard. The human with the words, Softy, and, for that night with Sherlock, above her head pushed open the door to the room and stretched her body. Though it wasn't necessary to stretch, it was good for being immersive. She had just gone offline half an hour ago. Yo, Softy, you look great today. A gamer was pushing a cart full of logs. He had the words, for that night with Sherlock, above his head. He was in the same guild. Where is Brother Dragonborn? Softy asked the gamer. He's right in front of the improvised stall selling goods. Softy proceeded to the improvised stall area. Victoria City was demarcated into different zones, just like Eternal Kingdom. There were living quarters, a commercial area, and an industrial area. The improvised stall area was within the commercial area. With experience from the dungeon, the gamers increased the space for the improvised stalls. The space of a stall in Eternal Kingdom was 3 meters by 2 meters, while that of Victoria City was 3 meters by 3 meters. The gamers in Victoria City were able to display more goods. The small size of the stall didn't limit the gamer's creativity. A goods shelf appeared in both Victoria City and Eternal Kingdom. The stall space was small, but there was no height restriction. A few carpenter gamers bought wooden planks and produced goods shelves that could display more goods. It was better than displaying goods on the ground. Dragonborn used these shelves to display spider meat, spider legs, dire wolfskin, plant seeds, and bonsai. Take a spear hit asked Dragonborn to sell the bonsai as he was skilled in bonsai. Take a spear hit said, my mom and dad are in the bonsai business, so I know a bit. The most popular merchandise was bonsai. There weren't many furnishings that the gamers could buy to decorate their homes. When Softy arrived, Dragonborn was sitting cross-legged on the ground. He didn't shout to promote his goods. Instead, he placed a wooden board with the prices and discounts of all the goods. When the gamers strolled past his stall, they could look at the pricing. Dragonborn stood up when he saw the approaching Softy, who said, Brother Dragonborn, what are you selling? What's the price of the cute bonsai? Did you make it? No, Take a spear hit made them, Dragonborn quickly replied. Softy nodded and said, besides the bonsai, I'm buying all of your goods. I'm joking. When are you closing your stall? Do you want to hunt for spiders at the spider's lair? Softy placed both of her hands behind her back like the female protagonist in a Japanese anime. Dragonborn felt that it was strange because a girl wouldn't normally do that. It wasn't nice to talk about it in front of others, so he replied, it's dangerous to hunt for spiders now. It's almost midnight, and the gamers are going offline. The monsters at the spider's lair are getting larger in numbers. What about the sighing wilderness? There aren't that many monsters over there, Softy pondered for a while before speaking excitedly. There aren't many monsters, but there are lots of gnomes and orcs. Dragonborn was referring to the gamers of Eternal Kingdom. The two factions were opposing forces. In the wilderness, their names would be highlighted in red. After killing each other, they could obtain reputation points as a reward. During the day, there were many gamers, so it was safer. During the night, the Victoria City faction was at a disadvantage because there were fewer gamers. The gamers of Eternal Kingdom were stronger. It would take the gamers of Victoria City some time to catch up. Victoria City doesn't have an instance dungeons. If only we had 2 instance dungeons at Spectre College, we could challenge the instance dungeons at night, Softy said with disappointment. We can't help it. We're only at the 3rd beta test. The content will only be updated gradually. Someone on the discussion forum revealed that the customer service representative Black Dragon said that Shirley was in negotiation with Spectre College to set up an instance dungeon for Victoria City. Dragonborn smiled and said, "Wait, Shirley's negotiating with Spectre College? Aren't Spectre College and Shirley at loggerheads?" Softy was surprised. She pondered for a while and said, "Ah, I understand. The customer service representative must be joking. He's saying that Victoria City will soon have a Spectre College instance dungeon, isn't he?" "Yes, we can actually enter the Spectre College instance dungeon. The teleport portal is at Eternal Kingdom. If only we could go to Eternal Kingdom and use the teleport portal to enter the Spectre College instance dungeon." "It's only a teleport portal, so I don't think it matters," Dragonborn said solemnly. That's a good plan. However, there are a lot of gamers in Eternal Kingdom. Most importantly, we can't get through the spider's lair." Softy pointed out the shortcoming of the plan. "We'll go by the Sighing Wilderness. There's a teleport portal at the Sighing Wilderness. How do we know we can't get there if we don't try?" Eternal Kingdom has a new battle campaign scenario, and it looks like all of them are going to the Black Volcano. There will be few gamers at the Sighing Wilderness in Eternal Kingdom, so we can try to sneak into Spectre College using this method. "We can visit Winterfell," Softy suggested enthusiastically. It's worth a try. But it's only a plan, and the possibility isn't high." Dragonborn smiled, but Softy grabbed Dragonborn's arms solemnly. She was blushing as she said, "Let's do it. Let's carry out this plan. I'll gather the members and inform everyone. I'm sure they'll be interested. I'll make use of our guild and your name to recruit them." "Isn't Hoodlum pretty popular? We can recruit him so that we can form an alliance with the Hoodlum Yoga Association. With 2 powerful characters, we can dominate Victoria City. You can be on par with Eternal Kingdom's Arthur and be Victoria City's top gamer. During the faction war, you can stand out and raise up your hand while shouting," Softy said excitedly while she grasped Dragonborn's arms. While they were chatting, 2 other gamers were spying in secret. Tisk, take a look. Those 2 are behaving intimately while at the public stall. Dragonborn is a public figure. He doesn't have a sense of propriety. The gamers at the side are capturing screenshots and recording videos. Take a Spear Hit shook his head and sighed. "Are you jealous, you lousy bachelor? Go and have an online relationship," Sealhead Ling Chong said while he patted Take a Spear Hit. "I'm not interested in that. Even if I die in the Sighing Wilderness and get eaten by the dire wolves, I won't be involved in an online relationship." Sealhead Ling Chong looked at Take a Spear Hit in disdain before turning his head and leaving. He said, "I'm going offline first. Enjoy your spying. I'm going to chat with my dream girl on WeChat." "Gosh, what dream girl? That's my online romance target, you silly dude." Looking at Sealhead Ling Chong's receding figure, Take a Spear Hit clasped his fists. "I want an online relationship." Chapter 409. Hoodlum is over there. Online relationships were a common occurrence in online games. In Victoria City, there were many online couples. To the 3 hamsters, they were strange couples. Since Lilo created a huge castle using her mana, the 3 hamsters had been living in the castle. They were Lilo's servants and bodyguards. At the same time, they played various roles in Victoria City. Big Boss was the logistics officer who was in charge of the exchange of items. He didn't understand why he had to explain the exchange rate of equipment to the gamers. But he would carry out Lilo's mission faithfully. Second Boss was in charge of the gamers' living quarters and city planning. He took care of the food and water in the city and decided whether to excavate for the new living quarters. He also ensured that gamers adhered to strict construction regulations. The youngest, Fat Otaku, was responsible for eating. Due to the different nature of their jobs, the gamers had various degrees of contact with them. Big Boss interacted with the gamers the most, so he witnessed various strange behaviors. Big Boss was unable to understand the affairs of the heart of the gamers. He witnessed a couple's conversation. "Aya, can you see me tomorrow? I'm resting tomorrow." "No, my family members don't allow me to travel far." It's hard to bear. I really want to see you." "I'd like to see you too, baby." Strange, were the gamers not seeing each other already? That was only the tip of the iceberg for their strange behaviors. They had good points too, like diligence and work efficiency. Big Boss learned of some of the complaints of the gamers. Why does Eternal Kingdom have such exciting plots? Yes, why don't we have any of those plots? We're gamers too. I'm requesting more interesting plots. Otherwise, I'm changing factions. I want to change factions too. Big Boss didn't understand the gamers' concerns. He would report them to Miss Lilo since she would definitely understand. I don't understand. Lilo frowned and replied to Big Boss. Big Boss was taken aback. How could it be? Let me ask Sherlock, he'll know why such things happened. My lady has her ways. Big Boss shouted excitedly in his helium-filled voice. Lilo ended her conversation with Sherlock via the crystal ball after a short time. Lilo summarized Sherlock's theory of gameplay, which consisted of playability, satisfaction, challenge, lucky draw, and gambling mentality. She said, "We have to find other things for them to do besides working, don't we? Shall we let them hop like a frog for an hour daily?" Second Boss pondered for a second and suggested, "Oh, Second Boss, your idea sounds interesting." Big Boss was surprised by Second Boss's suggestion. No, Lilo rejected the idea. Let them hop for 2 hours then. Second Boss thought for 2 seconds and said, "It's not a problem of time." Lilo shook her head and said, "It's not interesting to hop like a frog. How about swimming like a frog?" "Swimming like a frog? It's not fun to swim, my lord." "It's not." Big Boss and Second Boss rejected her idea. While they were brainstorming for ideas, a commotion was heard coming from outside. Fat Otaku ran over and grabbed Big Boss's shoulders. He panted heavily because he ran too fast. "Outside, outside?" Fat Otaku panted and couldn't speak properly. Big Boss shouted, "Calm down. Our lady is here. Outside, it's mealtime outside. Go for your meal." Fat Otaku finished his sentence, but Lilo had lifted her skirt while she walked outside. Big Boss and Second Boss threw Fat Otaku aside and followed Lilo. Many gamers were watching the tens of fully armored knights in front of the living quarters. The knights were carrying a flag bearing a lion's image, which belonged to a noble's flag. The knights didn't expect these citizens to be so insolent when they saw the flag of the Duke of York. Normally, commoners and merchants would kneel down and tremble as a show of respect for the flag. The gamers didn't recognize the flag, but Lancelot did. The gamers didn't attack these knights with shiny armor and weapons because they looked like NPCs who gave out missions. Moreover, Victoria City was a safety zone. If the knights didn't attack voluntarily, there wouldn't be any health bars. Lastly, the gamers were stopped by Lancelot. The main reason was the lack of health bars. Lilo, Big Boss, and Second Boss stood outside the crowd and observed the knights, while the gamers chatted non-stop. One of the knights shouted, "We're the Knights of the Duke of York. Where is your mayor? Let him come out. The Duke of York has an important matter to tell him." "She's our mayor." "That's not our mayor, you trash." "She's Duchess Lilo. She's our great Duchess." Dun 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 dun. The gamers replied to the knight warmly, but the knight didn't feel any respect. Instead, he felt the gamers were condescending. "Are these fellows messing with us?" The knight was furious. He lifted the horsewhip, but another knight caught hold of his hand and shook his head. The wise knight didn't wish to antagonize so many citizens, as they numbered in the thousands. The citizens were streaming out endlessly from buildings in the forest. How did they know of their arrival? As the knights were moving towards Lilo, they saw a person with a badly deformed spine in the crowd. They couldn't forget his face and figure because they were too ugly and grotesque. That was the slumbering hoodlum. "Hoodlum is over there. He dared to come back," one of the knights shouted. He was too excited because the reward from the Grand Duke was so generous that he could buy a piece of land and become a noble. The knights were equally excited. They whipped their horses in a bid to capture Hoodlum, who had no intention to escape. In fact, Hoodlum wanted to go through the crowd towards the knights. He was feeling emotional, and tears welled up in his eyes. He shouted to the knights, but the surrounding chatter was too loud, so the knights were unable to hear Hoodlum. The knights were guessing that the tortured Hoodlum was asking his comrades for protection. Hoodlum was looking agitated because he wanted revenge. The knights decided to strike first to scare the beggar-like crowd off. One of the knights unsheathed his sword and whipped his horse as he galloped towards a citizen that blocked him. He slashed with his sword, not to harm him but to intimidate him. The slashing wasn't rapid, and only the back of the sword was used. That citizen didn't dodge, he stared at the back of the sword that hit on his head and was stunned. Everyone looked up and stared at the knights. The gamers had the same gaze as Hoodlum. Chapter 410. It's big news. Lord Sherlock, don't we have to deal with the crisis in Victoria City? If it escalates, isn't it an open war with York territory? Brew asked with concern. In front of Sherlock was a crystal ball that showed a group of humans, fairies, and elves tying up tens of knights while their equipment was stripped and stashed at the side. All their horses were tethered to the side fence while waiting for the subsequent auction. The gamers didn't kill the Duke of York's knights because they didn't offer much resistance before surrendering. After Lilo's request, they were being tied up. The knights numbered in the tens, while Victoria City had thousands of citizens. Moreover, the citizens were fearless. They didn't flinch when they saw the flag of the Duke of York. The Duke of York won't let the matter rest. You're going against the Grand Duke and the entire kingdom. I advise you to release us. Return our equipment and horses. The knight's mouth was being stuffed. None of the gamers were willing to accept his strange encounter mission. If we obey the Duke of York and seek sincere collaboration with him like Winterfell, will he offer us benefits? Sherlock asked solemnly. According to my understanding of humans and the behavior of the Duke of York, most likely not, Bruce said. Then why do we have to satisfy his request? I won't do anything that isn't beneficial to us. Brew quickly asked, but Lord Sherlock, aren't you going to feign submission before overcoming him with his weakness? If we can make a Grand Duke our subordinate, it will facilitate the construction of our city. This doesn't sound like what a superior devil would do. A devil would never submit to humans. I won't even feign submission. Have you seen a human submit to an old chicken just to overcome it? Sherlock's question was persuasive. Isn't the current situation better for us? The Duke will send us free equipment and horses. Perhaps he will send more good stuff. It's also a good way to add more plots to Victoria City. I've discussed the matter with Lilo, and she will handle it well. I'm getting worried. Brew was interrupted by a fireball erupting in the dungeon core. A letter was thrown out of the flames. Sherlock examined the letter before the letter incinerated in his hand. He picked up his overcoat and said to Brew, "Inform the gamers to set off." Yoda has flown the airship to the Black Volcano. Patrick Star stood outside the small town, gazing at a huge airship. Airships were rare in the Underworld. After all, an airship core was hard to find. It was also a heavy burden for the dungeon core. Without strong power, it wasn't possible to supply an airship with sufficient mana. Patrick Star knew that Eternal Kingdom had an airship. He saw one when he visited Eternal Kingdom, though he didn't witness the airship participating in the battle with the ogres. Sherlock had flown the airship away, blown the top off of the ogre fortress, and kidnapped a kitten. Following Patrick Star was a local guide whom Sherlock contacted to lead his 5,000 members free tour to the Black Volcano. Patrick Star came to interview the tour guide immediately. It was big news for 5,000 citizens of Eternal Kingdom to tour here. After the tour guide listened to Patrick Star's interview question, he asked, puzzled, "Eternal Kingdom?" "No, I received an order for the Nobody Has This Name mercenary group's free tour. I even prepared welcoming materials. I can't possibly get the name wrong." The tour guide showed his prepared materials. The sludge monster took out a wet wooden board from his body and showed it to Patrick Star, who was befuddled. Perhaps the tea house boss gave him fake news? After checking the information from the guide, Patrick Star was sure that the Nobody Has This Name mercenary group was a front for the citizens of Eternal Kingdom. His professional acuity made him link up the robbery of Winterfell's item to the Northern Dukedom, the disappearance of 2,500 guards, the deaths of the few survivors, and the Black Volcano entering its active stage. Patrick Star came up with a conclusion. Are they relaxing here when the volcano is active? From what I know, they are a group of brave warriors. Tourists who come during the active stage of the Black Volcano are here to kill themselves. It's the first time in my career that I have witnessed a 5,000-member suicide group. With my rich experience, I'm confident in leading them to death while I remain intact. Patrick Star noticed the confidence of the sludge monster while he took down notes. Patrick Star nodded and asked, "I see. Besides the Black Volcano tour, are there any other arrangements?" "Of course. The free tour consists of many activities and collaboration with more than 100 merchants who will provide goods and services at reasonable prices. Every merchant has a 2-hour touring period. After that, there's a group shopping period. We have discussed the pricing with all merchants. Each transaction will have a higher price than the previous one. Patrick Starr nodded. The sludge monster was indeed professional. That was the content of Patrick Starr's interview of the tour guide. Patrick Starr was excited as he stood in front of the airship. Soon, the warriors of Eternal Kingdom would arrive for a tour. That was big news. Chapter 411. What are you doing here? Not Wearing Pants walked out from the Mana Rune formation of the airship and saw a sludge monster holding a sign and talking with Polio. The sign had the words, "We warmly welcome the Nobody Has This Name mercenary group to the Black Volcano small town. I am your tour guide Sludge Monster." Most of the gamers didn't leave the empty space surrounding the airship even though they saw the entrance to small distant town. This was because a flashing system notice appeared before each gamer when they stepped out from the teleport portal. Please don't leave the vicinity of the airship. Lord Sherlock is arriving. Most of the gamers would stay after seeing the notice. A small portion of the wandering gamers was unable to move even though they hadn't gone into small distant town. Sherlock had arrived and restrained the gamers with the plot animation mode. The gamers appeared from the main rune formation continuously, walked down the airship, came to the empty space, and entered the plot animation mode. Sherlock wasn't in a hurry to start the plot animation. He was chatting with the sludge monster before asking him to take Polio and Eggface to shop. Wait, isn't it a 5,000-member shopping group? The sludge monster tour guide was astonished when he discovered that only a cat and an incredible black dragon were going for the shopping trip. I think you're mistaken. I can understand if you look down on the purchasing power of a black cat, but this is a black dragon. Let the black dragon introduce himself. Eggface shifted his fat body as he walked out with his head high. He looked at the sludge monster and said, "I'm the great lord of the mountains, savior of Azeroth, fiery king of the black volcano, guardian of Cenarius, bloodsail admiral, warrior of Naru, hand of Arda." Sherlock frowned and asked, "Are you playing World of Warcraft? Which area?" "With Brew's server. I'm nostalgic, so I started playing a few days ago. When I was doing customer service, one of them gave me a gaming account. I intended to go for the Huviran server, but according to the discussion forum, it was the first choice for fast food gamers. Therefore, I didn't go," Eggface replied immediately. Sherlock nodded and looked at the gaping tour guide as he said, "Like you heard, you can't doubt the purchasing power of a black dragon, especially with his grand titles. Take them shopping immediately." The sludge monster was convinced by Sherlock's words, and he took Polio and Eggface to small distant town's shopping district. Sherlock walked before the gamers and spread out his hands as he said to them, "Warriors of Eternal Kingdom. Winterfell's crisis has to be solved by us. I can feel the contamination of this area by the Void Army and can smell the decadent scent. If we don't rescue the local residents, they will meet their doom. Warriors, make haste and build our outpost. We shall set off in a few days to explore the Black Volcano. During this period of time, find out as much information as possible with all your means. Find out the truth behind the attack on the Winterfell merchant band." A mission appeared before the gamers. Mission title: Investigate small distant town of the Black Volcano. Mission description: Small distant town is in danger, and their peaceful life has been disrupted. Winterfell's cargo was stolen, and there's a high chance it was done by the Void Army. We have to find out the truth. Mission objective: Investigate small distant town and find creatures who have information. Collect as much intelligence as possible. Mission reward: Each piece of useful information can be exchanged for corresponding reputation points and gain currency. Though the mission reward was ambiguous, the mission was part of a significant plot. This black volcano looked majestic from afar. With the small town in front of the volcano, it was guaranteed that the plot would be exciting. After entering small distant town, the gamers had to complete another task. They had to build the temporary outpost to protect the docked airship. This was land contaminated by the Void Army. Small distant town was a tourist resort underneath the black volcano. Though the volcano would erupt a few times, and the lava would spurt up to tens of meters, the residents of the town had a carefree and peaceful life. It was an eruption of the faraway volcano. While the volcano was erupting, an elderly gnome sat in a rocking chair, sipping his afternoon tea while he said emotionally, "What a peaceful day." This was located outside the entrance of the garrison guard of small distant town. A tall orc wearing a brown uniform and a cowboy hat pushed open the door and walked in. "Mr. Cherry, we've seen your resume. It fits the requirement of our garrison guard." "I don't quite understand," a gnome inspector who wore the same uniform as Cherry but had more decorations than Cherry said. "Why did you resign from Winterfell? That's a huge dungeon." "I was deceived by a good friend and did damaging things to Winterfell. Due to my guilty conscience, I left Winterfell." Cherry didn't hide anything and told the truth. As the Winterfell garrison guard captain, Cherry had a happy and fulfilling life. Though the gamers of Eternal Kingdom would commit crimes and increase his workload, they were part of his job. After that, Bond, who had committed suicide, asked him to investigate Eternal Kingdom. He had found evidence that Eternal Kingdom didn't wish Winterfell any harm. The ogres in the Ogre Fortress were colluding with Morgan to attack Eternal Kingdom. Bond also colluded with the Merchant Alliance to frame and weaken Eternal Kingdom so that Eternal Kingdom would lose in the dungeon war with Morgan. The Merchant Alliance was supposed to have a neutral stance, but it was smeared with such a scandal. Winterfell Dungeon Lord Nicholas reported in detail the facts and created a series of chain reactions that rocked the Merchant Alliance. Most of the truth was buried together with the death of Bond. Cherry was greatly affected. Though he was loyal to Winterfell, he flouted the rules of the Merchant Alliance. Even if Nicholas wasn't going to punish him, he had no moral courage to stay in Winterfell. After his resignation, he arrived at the Black Volcano, which was far from Winterfell and Eternal Kingdom. There was another reason Cherry didn't tell the inspector of small distant town. He didn't wish to be involved with those strange creatures bearing green symbols. He was feeling relieved after casting away his curiosity. "Good, though I think it was unnecessary. I respect your decision. I hope that you'll be happy working here," said the inspector as he shook Cherry's hand. "Don't worry, I'll take care of small distant town." Cherry smiled earnestly. He looked at the peaceful small distant town and inhaled deeply. He was starting a new phase of his life journey from today onwards. Farewell to his woes. A few goblins who had green symbols above their heads walked in front of him. Cherry saw them, and they saw Cherry. One of the goblins shouted, "Gosh! Isn't he Winterfell Garrison Guard Captain Cherry? Why is he here? Make a post. I'm earning my experience points." "DMN, don't post yet. Let me create a post instead." The goblins started shouting. In the office of the small distant town garrison guard, Cherry sat behind a rundown table while a long queue formed outside. They were gamers who had green symbols above their heads. Due to some reasons, they queued up here to solicit information. Of course, they couldn't tell the truth. They were here to report crimes. "Why are you here in small distant town?" A gamer sat down and asked Cherry when it was his turn to report crimes. "If you're here to ask questions, please go out now. If you're here to report crimes, please make haste." Cherry was getting impatient and wasn't afraid to show it. "I'm here to report crimes. The Void Army is corrupting this place. The end of the world is coming. Tell me, why are you here?" "Next," Cherry said without emotion. The queuing gamers dragged the shocked gamer away. The next gamer in line sat down excitedly and looked at Cherry with anticipation before asking, "Why are you here in small distant town?" Chapter 412. Sudden Change of Plot. The gnome inspector observed the crowd in the garrison guard office and the long queue. He nodded with satisfaction as he commented, "Cherry is highly capable. He's indeed a garrison guard captain from a large dungeon. Yes, we've just started work, and business is so good." A gnome garrison guard nodded in agreement. "With the current situation, we can complete 1,000 incident reports before knocking off." "Wah, that's awesome. He's indeed from a large dungeon." The other garrison guards were full of respect for Cherry. The gamers were diligently trying to gather intelligence. The queue at the garrison guard office would persist for the next few days. Outside the small distant town, at the empty space around the airship, the gamers gathered rocks and placed them in a circle to demarcate a boundary. Then they were going to pitch some tents, set up the cauldron, and prepare meals. There were specialized gamers to perform these tasks. After receiving the missions to set up camp, they worked diligently. Sherlock returned to the Dungeon Lord main hall in Eternal Kingdom and used the crystal ball to observe the activities of the gamers. His plan was simple, to build a camp for settling down. Then, he would use rune mana formations to create a revival point and teleport portal. Eggface and Polio went shopping at tens of shops according to the requirements of the contract. After, the tour guide would take them to the Black Volcano for a free tour. The Winterfell merchant band got into trouble at the Black Volcano, but there were no suspicious characters or leads. The robbers made use of the volcano eruption to commit the crime. Most likely, they were hiding in the Black Volcano. Even if they weren't hiding there, there must be some leads. The gamers had to investigate before the volcano erupted. They could only wait now. Sylvanas and her guild members walked on the streets of the small, distant town. There was Peasant, Arthur, not wearing pants, burning chest hair, and other members, including Raintia. They were chatting about the plot as they strolled along the streets of small, distant town. They were looking for significant NPCs whom they could obtain intelligence from. The other gamers were thinking of gathering intelligence, but Sylvanas was focused on Raintia. The gamers were chatting with Raintia. "Miss Raintia, how did you sculpt your face? Why is your goblin face so sweet?" I made it casually. "Miss Raintia, can I order 10 minor healing potions from you?" "Of course, but I have to finish my current order first." "Miss Raintia, how much have you learned about potion concoction?" "I'm at the same pace as everybody." "Miss Raintia, tisk." Sylvanas scoffed instinctively. "What's up, Sylvanas? You don't look good," Not Wearing Pants said bewilderedly when he heard Sylvanas scoff. "Please, call me Miss Sylvanas." Sylvanas replied unhappily to Not Wearing Pants. "Isn't that the surname of the Queen of the Devil's Windwalkers?" Peasant asked puzzledly. "She must be jealous of Raintia, you silly dudes." Burning Chest Hair joined in and smiled happily. He pointed to the nearby Arthur and said in a low voice, "Take a look at Arthur's position. He's only 2 creatures away from Raintia. Take a look at Sylvanas' position. Arthur's 5 creatures away from Sylvanas." Sylvanas rebuked immediately, "That's because my starting position was lousy. I'm changing position now." Sylvanas ran up to Arthur's side. Not Wearing Pants and the other gamers broke into laughter. Previously, Sylvanas would have initiated violence, but now, she was reduced to clenching her fists that were as large as sandbags. She couldn't do anything else. Because Raintia was present, Not Wearing Pants and the other gamers knew her weakness and were unrestrained in their teasing. While Sylvanas was about to explode, a nervous gnome ran out from an alley and knocked into Raintia. Raintia was a goblin and couldn't withstand the force of a gnome. She fell to the ground, whereas the gnome climbed up hastily and continued fleeing. The gamers blocked the gnome, who didn't have green symbols above his head. The gnome wasn't a gamer. "Give way," the gnome said in a low, hoarse voice. He looked wretched, and his skin was dark red instead of the usual green skin of a gnome. "Wait, bro, do you have an urgent problem? We're saviors of the world and warriors of Eternal Kingdom. We can help you. Did you have a strange encounter?" No, don't listen to him. I'm the world's greatest hero." According to logic, unusual things could trigger hidden plots. The gnome looked wretched and different. After knocking into Raintia without apologizing, the NPC was indeed unusual. Most likely, it was a strange encounter. Give way, give way." The gnome repeated his words while the gamers were busy advertising themselves in vain. "Cherry, there's no time. Cherry, there's no time. Letter, find the letter." After the dark red gnome spoke these words, he exploded. The furious explosion engulfed the surrounding gamers. Patrick Starr ran along a road and arrived at the explosion location, but it was surrounded by many creatures. Tens of garrison guards had surrounded the scene. "Sorry, give way. I'm a Winterfell press reporter." Patrick Starr squeezed through the crowd. The crowd was wearing armor, and they had green symbols above their heads. They were from Eternal Kingdom. "Please give way. The plot animation is starting." "Gosh, it's Patrick Starr. Do you have a mission for us?" "What mission? This is a plot animation. Give way immediately." The gamers made way noisily. Patrick Starr looked left and right before walking slowly to the side. A gnome inspector walked over. From his uniform, he seemed to be the highest-ranking commander in the garrison guard. "Are you the press reporter?" The gnome spat saliva on his palm and moistened his shiny scalp. After smoothing the wrinkles on his head, he extended his hand excitedly and said, "Greetings, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Small Distant Town's inspector. I'm called. Inspector. Cherry shouted from behind the inspector, come here quickly. There's a witness. Before the inspector had a chance to shake Patrick Starr's hand, he went towards Cherry. Patrick Starr wanted to follow the inspector, but he was stopped. Apologies, you can't go in. That's the first crime scene. A gnome garrison guard stopped Patrick Starr and said firmly. Can I appear in the newspaper? No problem, let him in. This is the first time we've encountered such a brutal crime. We need a reporter to report how we cracked this case. The inspector turned his head to speak, and Patrick Starr expressed his gratitude before entering the crime scene. The crime scene was a large area of incinerated land, and on the ground were various messy items. The huge explosion left behind a broken black longsword, a few hollowed breastplates, broken plate leggings, a badly burnt belt, and other damaged equipment. Is this equipment from Eternal Kingdom? The inspector was puzzled about how Patrick Starr could recognize the equipment. That's right. According to my first account witness, there were 20 creatures who had green symbols above their heads. From all angles, they seemed to be from Eternal Kingdom. You're Patrick Starr? Cherry was dumbfounded. When he saw Patrick Starr, he was taken aback. Captain Cherry? I interviewed you before. Why are you here? Why am I here? That's because. Cherry rubbed his head and squeezed his face. He then shifted his left and right legs and said solemnly, let's not talk about this. The important thing is this case. Inspector, he's the first eyewitness and the boss of the tea house. Please, tell us the details. I was brewing tea in the kitchen. Then, I heard a loud explosion. I brewed the tea and served it to the customer before I checked the accounts. After the customer paid their bill, I gave him a discount coupon. Spending 10 magic stones will yield a discount of 2 magic stones, and it only costs 1 magic stone to gain a membership card. These are my shop's discount coupons. The boss of the tea house described the explosion excitedly and gave his coupons to everyone. Chapter 413. The Exploratory Tour of the Black Volcano. The shopkeeper was speaking incessantly when a bystander shouted, let us go in. Let us go in. We're the involved party. Cherry was recording the testimony of the eyewitness, the boss of a tea house, when he heard a loud shout. He frowned because it was from a group of citizens from Eternal Kingdom. A garrison guard walked towards them and asked, you're the involved party? What involved party? We were killed in the explosion. That was a gnome terrorist. There must be a conspiracy behind this. Peasant shouted loudly. Cherry, there's no time. Cherry, there's no time. Letter, find the letter. In the images, a dark red-skinned gnome shouted before he exploded. Then, the images stopped. Lord Sherlock, this incident isn't simple. Sherlock replayed the images as Brew said, they're using suicide bombers. We don't know the intention of the other party, but they are against us. As they are in the shadows, it isn't good for us. I suggest we attack Winterfell and occupy a strategic location. I have the opposite viewpoint. From the images, the gnome was affected by a curse or delayed mana, and the gamers simply happened to meet him, Sherlock said. Is that so? Winterfell is lucky to escape another calamity. This matter is related to Cherry. Could it be his enemy? Brew asked curiously. I don't know. We'll keep the development in view and let those garrison guards handle it. Prepare for the trip to the Black Volcano tomorrow. Search for all possible survivors. Don't forget about the dungeon core that might not have been transported out, Sherlock reminded Brew. I understand, Lord Sherlock. Lilo sat in the castle and observed a few human knights fleeing. A group of gamers of Victoria City stood at the entrance of the village, watching the knights leaving. A few gamers wanted to follow, like Hoodlum, but they were restrained by Lilo's dominant aura. The mana of the gamers in Victoria City came from Lilo, so she was able to control them. Duchess Lilo, do you know the consequences? I've heard about the Duke of York. He's a cruel Lord Overseer. He'll do anything to achieve his goals. Though I don't know why he sent those knights, before we show our animosity, we should negotiate with them, Lancelot suggested as he stood before Lilo. Sir Lancelot, perhaps you weren't present during the incursion. Those knights struck first, and we were restrained in our actions, Big Boss said from the side. We didn't harm them. Didn't they leave intact? Second Boss pointed to the images in the crystal ball. Those fleeing knights were in their underwear. It's not a matter of being intact. Lancelot hesitated for a while, not knowing how to put it. Mealtime? Fat Otaku stood by the side and gazed at his two brothers. Wait, did you mention Sir Lancelot just now? Second boss didn't bother with his brother. Instead, he looked at Big Boss. Yes, Big Boss replied. According to my understanding, Lancelot can't be called Sir because there's no feudal nobility. Lord Sherlock taught us before. Did you forget? But I read some books, and they mentioned Sir here and Sir there. Isn't a knight called Sir? It's not the same. Both concepts are different. A lot of gamers called him Sir Lancelot. Moreover, Sir Lancelot didn't change their way of addressing him. That's because of pride. Big Boss and Second Boss were arguing over how to address Lancelot, but Lilo stopped her mana, and the images in the crystal ball vanished. Big Boss and Second Boss kept quiet as they stood by the side, waiting for Lilo to speak. Lancelot, will the Duke of York attack us? Lilo asked. Duchess Lilo, it's best if we prepare for the Duke of York's attack. Lancelot was very clear in his answer. Good, let our citizens prepare for battle. Lilo nodded and said, you may all leave. Lancelot was dumbstruck, but he followed the three hamsters out. Just like Duchess Lilo, those three hamsters didn't have the same sense of crisis as him. Lancelot knew that the citizens of Victoria City had the miraculous revival ability, but was there a limit to this ability? Facing the huge army of the Duke of York, even with unlimited revivals, how long could they persist? Lancelot didn't want Victoria City and the Duke of York to be at war because of the consequences. The Duke of York wasn't a lone Lord Overseer. What if he requested help from the king? Lancelot shook his head. It wasn't necessary to worry about the future. It was better for him to deal with his current tasks. Lancelot walked towards the gamers who were happy every day. They looked like they had no worries. Lancelot was going to increase their training load. At the foot of the Black Volcano. This is the famous Black Volcano, the sludge monster tour guide said to Eggface and Polio. Behind the sludge monster, the Black Volcano erupted violently, and the ground started quaking. Behind Eggface and Polio were a few thousand chattering gamers. Eggface explained that they were his bodyguards. The sludge monster wanted to complain, but he was wary of being beaten to death by the Black Dragon. He had never had a Black Dragon tourist. Weren't dragons able to flap their wings and fly around? The sludge monster tour guide took Eggface, Polio, and the group of gamers on their Black Volcano exploratory tour. Chapter 414. Prepare for the meeting. At the foot of the Black Volcano, a long trail of creatures was getting ready to go up the mountain. The sludge monster tour guide was at the front, explaining the tourist spot. This is the entrance to the Black Volcano tourist spot. It requires an entrance ticket during the dormant period, but as it's the most dangerous period, for the next 2 months, a ticket isn't required. We can enter at any time. The sludge monster tour guide explained everything as he led the whole tour group forward. After 100 meters, he explained the composition of the nearby soil and rocks. Wait a moment, is there a place that is dangerous and good for hiding? Sherlock asked the sludge monster. If there's such a place, then it's inside the Black Volcano. The inside of the Black Volcano has a network of caves. Even during the dormant stage, it's still a dangerous place. It's even worse during the active stage. The sludge monster tour guide was surprised, and he said, so you're going to kill yourselves en masse? I mean, finding the true meaning of life. Yes, you're close. Sherlock nodded, not bothering to rebuke. The gamers were in plot animation mode. In that case, let me explain in detail. The sludge monster tour guide cleared his throat and said, the most special part of the Black Volcano. The Black Volcano wasn't only an important tourist attraction, but it also solved the overpopulation problem of the northern underworld. The famous spots were the Black Volcano lava caves. The name itself suggested that it was a dangerous place. According to the tour guide, if anyone wanted to hide something, that was the best place. As the volcano was in the active stage, besides suicidal tourists, no creatures would want to venture inside. The sludge monster tour guide was unwilling to enter. After the sludge monster tour guide gave Sherlock a rough map and wished them luck, he dragged his sticky body and left. The gamers started on their new exploratory tour. Mission title: Explore the Black Volcano. Mission description: We've come to the foot of the Black Volcano. The Void Army might be the cause of Winterfell's missing cargo. You have to overcome obstacles to complete this mission impossible. Mission objectives. Explore the Black Volcano map. 0/1. Explore the Lava Caves map. 0/1. Mission reward. After the exploratory mission, gamers who submit information on the maps will receive additional rewards. All full-service gamers will receive standard reputation points and game coins. When the gamers received the mission, the exploratory tour of the Black Volcano commenced. Outside the Black Volcano, besides the occasional flow of the lava, there was the danger of losing one's footing. It was different in the lava caves. Gosh, finally, there are elemental monsters. Not wearing pants looked excitedly at a walking fireball with legs. The lava caves were filled with these strange monsters. The information on these monsters was updated on the official website. Monster name: Lava Scout. Monster introduction. This is a common elemental monster in the Underworld. It doesn't have intelligence and will attack all living creatures with its flames. It appears in active volcanoes. Its attacks consist of scorching. Wearing armor will cause secondary damage. Level: 20 to 25. Possible loot: lava spar, a widely used material for forging, enchantment, potion concoction, and alchemy. Note: most of the loot can be exchanged for coins at the Dungeon Core main hall. Monster name: Lava Warriors. Monster introduction. A stronger and rarer elemental monster. Compared to the brainless Lava Scout, it has some intelligence. Under normal circumstances, they will appear in groups of 3. It has a strong fire-based capability, and sometimes it will release small fireballs to attack all nearby creatures. Level: 25 to 30. Possible loot: lava spar, a widely used material for forging, enchantment, potion concoction, and alchemy. Lava crystal, a more refined lava spar. A widely used material for forging, enchantment, potion concoction, and alchemy. Note: most of the loot can be exchanged for coins at the Dungeon Core main hall. Surveying and mapping the lava caves wasn't simple. The body of the Black Volcano was filled with cave entrances, and the gamers labeled at least 30 entrances. After entering, the lava caves were like labyrinths. Normal creatures would fear losing their way, but the gamers weren't worried. After the first group of gamers entered the caves, in less than an hour, all of the cave entrances were labeled. There were various labyrinth strategy guides on the discussion forum. Losing their way? Impossible. Let me try taunting them. There were close to 30 guild members of the Pioneer Alliance near Peasant. They were wary of the new fire elementals. The highest level monster that they had encountered was the level 25 ogre. The lava scouts were on par with the ogres, though their build was smaller. Grandsons. Peasant shouted at the nearby lava scouts, but they didn't respond. Taunting is useless against them. Sylvanas lifted her short bow and looked at her comrades as she asked, "What shall we do? Shall I shoot at them from a distance? It's the only way. Let's fire an arrow from a distance." The other gamers agreed with Sylvanas' suggestion. "Prepare yourselves. I'm firing the first volley." Sylvanas shouted and readied her short bow. The other gamers retreated and prepared their weapons and shields. Sylvanas pulled the bowstring, and the arrow flew out. It landed accurately on the lava scout, but the arrow started burning. The lava scout was intact, and it charged at the gamers. "Get ready," Arthur shouted, and the other gamers were already prepped. The flames on the lava scout became larger, and a small fireball flew towards one of the gamers, who didn't evade in time. The fireball smacked into his body, and the gamer fell to the ground. After a moment, the corpse disappeared, leaving only burning equipment. A gamer took off his clothing in a bid to douse the flames burning the equipment, but it was in vain. He could only see the equipment being damaged by the flames. The equipment wasn't molten, but it would incur high repair costs. **T. What kind of a monster is that? Special damage against equipment? DMN, the game producers are going to cheat us of our equipment. It's too difficult. The gamers complained, but they were running out of time as fireballs flew at them. Soon, balls of flame started burning in the cave tunnels. Simba forged with his hammer. There was an unusually large number of gamers there to repair their equipment. Their equipment was mostly damaged by fire. It wasn't technically difficult to repair, but the repetition made Simba unhappy. Simba frowned, exasperated by the heavy workload. Those gamers who wanted to improve their equipment were dissuaded by Simba's fierce expression. It would be better for them to improve their equipment the next day. Simba repaired the last equipment. Seeing the long queue outside, he closed the blacksmith shop and said, "I'm knocking off. Come tomorrow." Repairing equipment. Repairing equipment. Elementary level blacksmith repairing equipment. The result of the forging depends on your looks. Find me if you want your equipment repaired. The price is affordable, and the benefits are plentiful. I have repaired 10 pieces of equipment without damage. 100 bronze coins per piece of equipment. 1 silver coin for full body armor. After Simba closed his blacksmith shop, the gamers started shouting outside of his shop. Apprentice blacksmith gamers knew how to repair equipment, but their efficiency wasn't as high as Simba's. When Simba was available, the gamers were willing to queue up because there was a 100% success rate, unlike the improvement of equipment, which depended on Simba's mood. The apprentice blacksmiths wanted to improve their forging skills by making new equipment and repairing it. When Simba knocked off, the apprentice blacksmiths dared to shout and solicit business from impatient gamers who couldn't wait for the next day. Some of the gamers belonged to the impatient category. Simba didn't care about the apprentice blacksmiths. He was packing his things to go home. As he was leaving, he saw Mufasa running towards him. Mufasa panted while he said, "Cousin, make haste. The dungeon lord is calling us for a meeting." Meeting? Salary time? It wasn't the time for salary payment. Simba was puzzled, and Mufasa had no idea. They went to the dungeon lord main hall to find out from Sherlock. Chapter 415. Version 0.38 Update Log. When Simba and Mufasa arrived at the dungeon lord main hall, the other employees were already waiting. Once everyone was present, Sherlock stood up and announced, "I would like to express my gratitude to you for your contributions over the past half a year. The contracts of Simba and Moros are ending. However, I have prepared new contracts. We can sign them in 2 days." "Wait, Lord Sherlock, Simba stood up as he drummed up his courage. Sherlock glanced at Simba and said, "Simba, there's something that I want to inform you of. I asked Dungeon Lord Nicholas about the leader of the Merchant Alliance's Professional Blacksmith Union, and they have a close relationship. You're now an intermediate blacksmith. To upgrade to an advanced blacksmith, you have to take a difficult exam that costs a ton. Don't worry, as long as Dungeon Lord Nicholas helps you say a few good words, you shouldn't have much of a problem." Simba immediately replied, "I feel that I should sign the contract now. I'm sincere in working for Lord Sherlock. It's the greatest honor for me to work for Lord Sherlock." Me too, me too." Moros stood up and shouted, "Even if it's a soul contract, I'd be willing to sign it. Let me be the soul partner of Lord Sherlock." Sherlock said happily, "The signing of the contracts isn't urgent. We'll sign them after the end of the meeting. The main purpose of the meeting is service upgrade." Seeing the bewildered expressions, Sherlock explained calmly, "We have more and more citizens, but our services haven't caught up. We can't sustain this for long. I feel that it's necessary to define and upgrade everyone's scope of service. The first item is that the education of mana engineering has to start. Yoda, don't just research with hemp rope technology. I know that he's intelligent, knowledgeable, and interesting, and if you weren't married, you would follow him in mana research for the rest of your life, but take a look around. There are many citizens who are also interested in mana engineering. Besides you, I also need thousands of mana engineers who can operate my assembly lines in my factories." "I understand, Lord Sherlock. Don't you worry," Yoda said as he recorded his thoughts in his notebook. Number 2, Brainiac, I have reduced your workload to the minimum. In the dungeon, your workload is the lightest. Brainiac lowered his head as he recalled that he hadn't slept for a few months. Sherlock quickly said, "For magical items creation, I feel that it's time for you to start enchantment classes. In addition, Winterfell has given us some raw materials for magical items. It's time to use them as they won't increase in value." Sherlock took out a large map that depicted details of a city. The title of the map read, Cross City. "Everyone, please take a look. This is the construction blueprint for Cross City." Everyone gathered to take a look. The middle of the blueprint was the living quarters. The other areas were the mana engineering industrial area, potion concoction factory, magical items factory, sewing factory, and other factories. The high-tech buildings were the mana engineering, potions, and magical items factories. The low-tech buildings were the crockery, furniture, and handicraft factories. It was a comprehensive blueprint. Our goal is lofty. Everyone has to work diligently, Sherlock said to everyone. It's too difficult. Peasant walked on the street of small distant town. He held a lava spar, which was taken out of the lava caves, in his hand. He wanted to see if the lava spar could be sold for magic stones. He was unable to do so. Nobody wanted to buy the lava spar because it wasn't a rare item and wasn't being used in small distant town. Even if it was used in Winterfell, it would be supplied by specialized units. After the gamers defeated the lava scouts with great effort, the obtained lava spar couldn't be used to trigger missions or exchanged for magic stones. The lava spar could only be sent to Eternal Kingdom to be exchanged for rewards, kept for personal use, or stored for future equipment improvement. Most of the gamers preferred to exchange the lava spar at Eternal Kingdom. The gamers had gained experience. The price offered by Eternal Kingdom was a floating one. The greater the supply of an item, the lower the price. The lower the supply of an item, the greater the price. Of course, the final sale price to the gamers would be higher. Eternal Kingdom was always making a profit no matter what. Peasant shopped around and discovered that the lava spar couldn't be sold, so he intended to exchange it in Eternal Kingdom. When he turned around, he saw a gnome carrying a large bag and collecting dropped letters on the ground. As a new age nice guy, he decided to offer his help. Peasant walked over and saw a letter. He held it in his hand and was stunned. "Hey, why are you taking my letter? I'm sending the letters." The gnome shouted at Peasant furiously. He didn't turn violent because Peasant was a tall orc. It wasn't hard to see that the gnome wanted to slap Peasant. "Wait, are you a postman? Is there a letter that can't be sent out? Or the receiver is Cherry?" Peasant shouted abruptly. "Huh? What are you up to?" The gnome was about to scold Peasant, but when he saw the magic stone offered by Peasant, he said righteously, "There is a letter that arrived a few days ago, but the receiver can't be found." The eyes of Peasant lit up. It was related to the incident 2 days ago. While Peasant was triggering a new plot, Dungeon had another new update. The night that the lava caves of the Black Volcano were open to the gamers, they discovered new updates on the discussion forum. Version 0.38 Update Log. Warriors of Eternal Kingdom. To encourage you to find Winterfell's lost cargo, we have introduced new content to improve the gaming experience. We also prepared a large upgrade. Added new life skill, mana engineering. It was already available, but the NPC Yoda wasn't in the best condition to teach. He was only interacting and giving missions to certain gamers. As such, he triggered the hidden prop, Gundam. However, the behavior has been rectified, and Yoda will be back to normal. Added 2 new life skills, magical items creation and enchantment. Magical items creation and enchantment are 2 inseparable skills. Gamers are able to learn the skills from Brainiac in Alicia's Burial Hall. The materials can be bought from Brainiac or Winterfell. Added new combat level, intermediate combat techniques. Beast and Moros are able to conduct lessons on intermediate combat techniques. Gamers may find out more details from them. Added new map, Black Volcano. Beware of falling boulders. Added new map, Black Volcano, Small Distant Town. We have opened the Small Distant Town map. Gamers are able to enter Small Distant Town freely. Added new map, Black Volcano, Lava Caves. The temperature in the caves of the Black Volcano is very high. They are also filled with fire elementals. We don't know what's inside. A dungeon core could be inside. All gamers, please look out for it. Added Lava Caves Monster Bestiary. We have updated the Monster Bestiary. If new monsters are encountered, they will be updated as well. Added new enchanted item, Attributes Enhancing Runes. Created by both Hemp Rope Technology and Yoda, the runes are applied to the body to enhance attributes. It's currently in the testing stage, and volunteers are being recruited for testing. The registration fee is 100 magic stones. Added new item, Equipment Enchantment. Brainiac created the enchantment scroll, which can be used to enhance equipment attributes. For example, an enchantment scroll to make your equipment look more formidable, enchantment scroll to make your equipment appear as a piece of high-level equipment, and enchantment scroll to make your equipment look more expensive. Added new merchandise, Small Distant Town Souvenir. Gamers are encouraged to take a look at the souvenirs, though they don't have much functional value. Added new bug, Missing Customer Service. Due to some special reasons, the Black Dragon who was performing customer service will be missing for a period of time. The period of time depends on when you find the dungeon core. I'm leaving a blank wild card. If I think of a new update, I will immediately add it. Chapter 416. The plot depends on the gamers. Hemp rope technology. Wait, am I still testing the attributes enhancing runes? Are the volunteer registration fees for me? Autumn's ink. It's frightening. When I went to the blacksmith shop just now, I saw a sign that indicated equipment improvement to level 8. Why do the game producers not have the courage to put it in the version update? God King of Wu. Create a can knockdown game. I guarantee you will earn a lot of money. Wise men like water. What's with the souvenirs? Civilian mana terminal can be replaced with capacitors. Are we allowed to take mana engineering? I want to create a Gundam. Simba's business had been upgraded. After signing the new contract, Sherlock prepared a new scope of work, which included equipment improvement to level 8. Previously, there were only organic materials, so the equipment improvement was limited to level 5. The gamers were able to access Winterfell and hunt for lava scouts and lava warriors, so materials for equipment improvement beyond level 5 were available. However, it didn't mean that it was easy. According to Simba, the gamers were only able to improve their equipment to level 5 until Arthur, who was wearing black armor, appeared outside the blacksmith shop. Improve my equipment to level 6, Arthur said to Simba as he stripped his black armor and placed it on the table. Do you have all of the materials? Simba pointed to the wooden sign at the side. The sign indicated the required materials from level 6 to 8. The materials for level 6 improvement were 1 unit of underground worm's secretion, 1 unit of adamantine ore, 3 pieces of lava spar, and 1 packet of bloody chrysanthemum tea. Winterfell tea merchants designated counter packaging. Arthur had prepared the materials, and he placed them on Simba's counter. Simba placed the armor on the forging platform. Then, he put the secretion, adamantine, and lava spar on the armor. As for the bloody chrysanthemum tea, he put it in a basket underneath the counter. The emotionless Simba was about to hammer the armor when he spotted another packet of bloody chrysanthemum tea on the counter. Gratitude fee. Arthur looked at Simba and pushed the tea forward. Though the gamers at the side stared with their eyes wide, Simba put the bloody chrysanthemum tea in his pocket as he said, "Cough, only this time. I'll not make exceptions the next time." Dang. Simba hammered the armor and returned the intact equipment back to Arthur. Equipment improvement was successful. Next, Arthur's special method for equipment improvement spread like wildfire on the discussion forum. Many gamers imitated Arthur's method by preparing NPC gratitude gifts. The more expensive gifts weren't practical. Not every gamer was as rich as Arthur and could afford 2 packets of bloody chrysanthemum tea as gifts to Simba. Though the other gamers couldn't afford expensive gifts, they brought items that looked expensive. For example, Simba, please accept this equipment. I prepared this gift as a token of gratitude. Simba, I obtained this pebble by the stream with great effort. You have to keep it. Simba would hammer their equipment and destroy it before saying, your equipment's gone. Not all equipment would be destroyed. If the gift was bloody chrysanthemum tea, then the equipment improvement would be guaranteed. Other gifts with a high success rate included the metal sticks sold in Winterfell. These gifts were expensive, so the gamers would only prepare gifts if the equipment improvement was above level 5. Besides the change in equipment improvement, the number of life skill classes had increased, giving the gamers more choices. Fortunately, the game didn't restrict the number of gamers with a certain life skill. Other online games restricted the gamers to certain life skills, while Dungeon allowed the gamers to learn all life skills, provided they had enough energy. In fact, most of the gamers didn't have enough energy to learn all of the life skills. Each life skill required the completion of certain daily missions. A gamer who learned 2 life skills would have reached their maximum capacity. The skill that made the gamers excited was the equipment enchantment. After the version update, Brainiac started selling enchantment scrolls. The enchantment scrolls created different effects on the equipment. For example, the enchantment for making equipment look more expensive caused the equipment to glitter. Visually, it made the equipment look more expensive. But that wasn't the main point. The main point was the expensive enchantment that enhanced attributes. For example, Frost enchantment would create a layer of frost on the weapon or armor for a duration of time. It wasn't just for visual appeal. A piece of frost enchanted armor would freeze the gamer and slow down his movements. Wait, was there something wrong? Many gamers pondered over the use of the frost enchantment. Was the enchantment used on themselves as a debuff? The gamers were smart, and they figured out the actual uses. When the enchantment is used on an enemy's equipment, the rate of victory increases dramatically. And it's a necessity for equipment when entering the lava caves. The fire attacks of the lava scouts and warriors will be greatly diminished, and the equipment won't be damaged. After the version update, there was more gameplay for the gamers to explore. Peasant was diligently researching his new mission track. He was in the post office of small distant town, holding the only letter that wasn't claimed. This is the first time such a situation happened, the postman said as he passed the thick letter to Peasant. Peasant was discovering a new plot, so he didn't care about privacy as he tore open the letter and examined its contents. It was an old, tattered diary. Chapter 417. The Plan of the Duke of York. In the envelope was a surveillance diary. It was written by a gnome in military service. The cover had the words, "Thank you to my gnome nanny, who gave me the diary." There was a signature, Anthony. The first page read, "A record of my journey from Winterfell to the Northern Dukedom. On day 56 after I left Winterfell, we arrived at the tourist spot Black Volcano. There are many creatures here, especially at the mouth of the volcano. Creatures were falling inside like dumplings. It was a spectacular sight. On day 57 after I left Winterfell, the leader forced me to do things against my will. It was frustrating. Day 62, we stayed at the Black Volcano for a week. I don't understand why the leader wants us to stay here. If we don't leave, the active period of the Black Volcano is going to start. Day 63. Our leader betrayed us. He poisoned our food, and we were captured. In order to go home, I chose to collude with the leader. There were 2,490 of us who colluded with the leader. Day 64. Our leader deceived us. He and, the words were blurred by bloodstains, colluded to deceive us. They wanted the dungeon core. Day 65. I have to do something to warn the newcomers. But I'm unable to do anything because I'm dying. If I die, whoever has this diary, please avenge me. The perpetrator is. The writing stopped at the crucial part. This is making me impatient. Who is the murderer? Where is the dungeon core? Why was Cherry's name mentioned by the gnome? Sylvanas looked frantic. She almost tore the diary to shreds, but not wearing pants stopped her. I don't know, but at least it's a lead. Let's give it to Cherry and see if he can decipher anything. Everyone agreed with not wearing pants, and they noisily took the diary to the garrison guard station. Tens of gamers were collecting intelligence at the station. A few days ago, this place was a calamity area due to the gamers collecting intelligence. Cherry was in his office when he saw tens of creatures barging in and shouting. Let me see, Cherry. We have an item from a strange encounter. No, it's an important lead. This diary. Are you sure it's from one of the lost Winterfell guards? Cherry held the diary in his hand and was deep in thought. Most likely, it is, Burning Chesthair said confidently. Yes, Captain Cherry, did you think of anything? Tell us what we should do next. We will capture all of these traitors and put them behind bars. I can't restrain myself. Captain Cherry, did you think of anything? The gamers chatted wildly, clearly excited. But Cherry frowned and said, things are beyond my expectations. According to my knowledge, the escorts were all elites that were selected with stringent criteria. Most of them were from the Imperial Guards of the old Dungeon Lord, Onionhead. They were very capable. The gamers became grave, and Cherry continued speaking. They had the toughest shields. The gamers raised their brows. Their bows had the greatest range. Sylvanas shifted her finger. They had the most gorgeous helmets with the best 360 degrees view. Some gamers twisted their heads and discovered that they could, at most, turn 100 degrees left and right. They were getting more excited. Pauldrons, breastplates, and the most comfortable chain armor. Believe me, each piece of equipment was forged by a master blacksmith. The gamers were unable to control themselves and started shouting. Where, tell us, where are they? Stop talking. Give us the location, I'll kill all of them. I beg you to tell me. I'm absolutely loyal to Winterfell. After discovering these traitors, I feel the pain. Believe me, if I make my move, all of their equipment will be gone. Cherry didn't expect the gamers to be so resolute and fearless even after hearing about the elite Winterfell guards. He felt a sense of admiration for them. This must be the brotherhood between Eternal Kingdom and Winterfell. He was originally plotting against the citizens of Eternal Kingdom. However, they were trying hard to help Winterfell. He thought they were after the riches of Winterfell and wanted to obtain death compensation, but he was wrong. Were they here for a tour? If they were to die, only Eternal Kingdom would pay them death compensation. Without any obvious benefits, why would they be so enthusiastic? They were faithfully working for the honor of Winterfell. Tears were welling up in Cherry's eyes. Apologies, I didn't get any information. But don't worry, I'll continue to investigate. If there is news, I'll tell you immediately. Let us help you with the investigation. Sylvanas said solemnly, my nickname is Master Sleuth Sherlock. I'm Holmes. I'm Kandaichi. I'm Conan Edogawa. Gosh, there's a corpse in this house. The perpetrator must be within you. Ha 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 ha. I'm cracking up. Cherry gazed at the group of noisy gamers. After serious thought, he nodded. Cherry wanted to recruit an assistant. A garrison guard couldn't be successful without a capable assistant. When Tiny Meatball was the Winterfell captain, he had the help of Cherry as his assistant. They cooperated and solved some big cases. Cherry became nostalgic. Captain Cherry, what shall I do? Arthur, who was standing beside Cherry, asked. After a selection test, Cherry chose the strongest-looking orc, Arthur. According to intelligence, this letter is from the post office. Let's begin our investigation at the post office. Cherry nodded. He picked up a small notebook and was about to set off when an orc shouted outside the office, Captain Cherry. I know about the post office. I've questioned them. The postman said that the letter was posted in the post box without any posting details. Because of that, nobody claimed it, and it was placed in the post office. That orc was Peasant. As the first gamer to discover the hidden plot, Peasant went to the post office and spent magic stones to obtain intelligence. He was feeling heartache from paying the magic stones. Tisk. Cherry didn't compliment Peasant. Instead, he scoffed and said to Arthur, remember, while we are investigating, we can't allow external interference. We have to obtain first-hand information. Let's go to the post office. Cherry led Arthur to the post office. A large group of gamers followed at a distance. It was a rare plot. Considering the generous rewards, the gamers weren't willing to miss it. While the gamers of Eternal Kingdom were exploring the interior of the Black Volcano, the knights that were attacked by the gamers of Victoria City found a passing merchant band after traveling for a day and a night. After showing their identities and offering generous rewards, they made the merchant band travel towards the castle of the Duke of York. After 5 days of travel, the pathetic knights returned to the castle of the Duke of York. They met the Duke of York as soon as they could. What? How dare they do such a thing? The Duke of York wasn't angry, but his advisor was in a rage. Duke of York, this is a great insult to you. We can't let them humiliate Lion's clan. We have to hit back. The Duke of York sat in his chair and looked at the knights as he said, did you see Hoodlum? And they were protecting Hoodlum? And the mayor of Victoria City didn't wish to communicate with you? That's correct. They were brash and arrogant. The knight nodded and said, I see. The Duke of York laughed. He had a perfect plan in his mind. He was going to enslave them all. Before the knights returned, the Duke of York had finished interrogating the slave merchant and obtained important intelligence. The citizens of Victoria City were all like Hoodlum, having natural fighter instincts. The Duke of York was going to enslave them all. Chapter 418. Cherry's speculation. The Duke of York wanted to enslave all the citizens of Victoria City. But he wasn't able to do that due to his agreement with Victoria City. Victoria City's leader, what the Duke of York referred to as mayor, was Duchess Lilo. Whether the title was legitimate wouldn't be discussed. An act of violence against a landlord would create gossip. There would be various reasons for the declaration of wars and even sanctions against him. The Duke of York didn't want to be sanctioned, so he needed a legitimate reason to declare war on Victoria City. Humiliation was an appropriate cause for war. You may all leave. I'll not let Victoria City off. The Duke of York calmed his humiliated knights and said, spread the news of the humiliation to all parts of the kingdom and send another group of knights to warn Victoria City. You know what to do next. I understand, Grand Duke. The advisor acknowledged the Duke and left. The Duke of York was sitting behind the table with a sinister smile. He looked towards one corner of the room where a conservatively dressed female servant was sitting on a stool and washing clothes. The female servant was shedding tears of humiliation. Arthur wasn't sure of the mission requirement. As it was a strange encounter mission, there was no mission guidance or indication of reward. Cherry only wanted Arthur to follow him to the post office, tea house, and other entertainment outlets like Kids Wonderland, shopping malls, and kindergarten in the small town. They went to the post office to confirm the truth about the unclaimed letter. Like Peasant said, the letter was sent to the post office a few days ago. Nobody claimed it, and it appeared out of thin air. It was discovered by Peasant. Cherry was sure of one thing. The person who left the letter in the post office was a resident of small distant town. In addition, this creature hadn't left the town. Arthur was surprised by Cherry's conclusion. He asked instinctively, why? Arthur regretted asking. Asking an NPC about the plot was redundant. Cherry answered Arthur seriously, it's a good question. According to my speculation, the letter was in the post office for less than 5 days. The letter didn't have an addressee or poster, so it must be from a resident of small distant town. The creature didn't leave due to the active black volcano, and it's not plausible for anyone to travel here. A resident of the town placed the letter 5 days ago and didn't have time to pack and leave. I have a gut feeling he didn't leave. That's my sixth sense. Cherry was speculating initially before diverting to his instincts. Arthur didn't bother since it could be the NPC's setting. After investigating for a day, there were no useful leads. Nobody in small distant town had an idea of the things in the diary, and they weren't aware of the Winterfell merchant band. They tried very hard to recall while answering. During the dormant season, there were lots of tourists. It would be hard to notice a group of 2,500 tourists. Cherry's investigation had come to a dead end. Cherry had a headache when he thought about it. He decided to have some bloody chrysanthemum tea to clear his mind. It was time to knock off. Cherry didn't want Arthur to work overtime, so he let Arthur leave. Arthur didn't obtain any rewards after helping the NPC, and the plot didn't have any developments. Could this be a fake strange encounter mission? The other gamers had similar thoughts as they gathered outside the garrison guard station and chatted. Most of the gamers were members of the Pioneer Alliance and were interested in the game plot. They wanted to develop the plot and discover more strange encounter missions. It would be best if they could obtain equipment as a reward. The gamers decided to leave when Cherry was about to knock off. However, a few gamers shouted abruptly, "There's someone in the office." In Cherry's office, the gamers saw a gnome in the empty office that Cherry and Arthur had just vacated. Nobody would have noticed the gnome if a gamer hadn't put the office under surveillance. Arthur dashed in and saw the gnome holding the diary that was burning. Shucks, he's destroying the strange encounter prop. It wasn't known who shouted, but the gamers dashed in and pounced on the gnome. They pounced on the burning diary to be more exact. The diary was a piece of important evidence. It wasn't clear why the gnome was burning the diary, but he knew about its existence. He even knew the whereabouts of the merchant band. The gamers were excited when they thought about the superior equipment of the Winterfell escorts. They couldn't be bothered with the garrison guards that were stopping them. They were in a big rush to capture the gnome. Capture him alive. Don't kill him. Interrogate him. Save the diary. The gamers shouted, but in the next second, the skin of the gnome became red hot. Just when the gamers surrounded him, he exploded. Boom! Cherry was befuddled. When he heard the gamers shouting at the gnome to stop burning the important diary, he recovered. That's a breakthrough. I'm impressed with myself. Cherry was about to dash into his office to grab the diary and examine it. The breakthroughs were in the diary. However, he was unable to get through the wall of gamers. The gamers flooded the office like mad creatures. Cherry was at his wits' end. He even threw out the scalding bloody chrysanthemum tea in a bid to create a path. The scalded gamers were indifferent as they squeezed towards the office. Then, the sudden explosion and the ensuing heatwave made Cherry fly out. Cherry knocked into a wall and felt his body coming apart as he climbed up slowly and saw his office in ruins. Because the gamers were in front, shielding him, Cherry was intact. The gamers suffered serious casualties, and they were all wailing. Gosh, that's another explosion. Equipment, our equipment, it's devastating. Fortunately, I'm slow. Otherwise, my equipment would be gone. Look for the diary. What's there to search? The explosion would have reduced it to ashes, the surviving gamers shouted. Ringing sounds filled Cherry's ears as some colleagues helped him, and he could hear incoherent voices. Cherry, what happened? Are you all right? Cherry was bewildered. He recovered himself and looked at his colleagues and the gamers. He understood. The citizens of Eternal Kingdom saved him.